All right, the next item on the agenda is item 9. No, we don't have a presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and open it for public comment.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. Item 9 is to authorize a competitive solicitation for food preparation supplies, and equipment. We have 6 requests to speak on this item, 3 in person and 3 requesting to speak by phone. Also note for the record that we received 1 e-comment in favor. For any members of the public that requested to speak on item 9 by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition. As your name is called, please come forward. I'd like to invite Michael Brando, Mark, and Audra. I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Michael, on this item, I have some comments again about the use of language. And this idea in the overview section, it talks about procuring these contracts based on equity informed. And from what I've seen watching all the deliberations here, the whole idea of equity is very, very, very confusing. And something needs to be done to help people more clearly understand what you mean by equity. Again, I don't like the fake climate change language in this item that talks about low carbon intensity. All right, and then in the equity impact statement itself, it says that this capacity to provide meals is to help some of the most vulnerable people in the region. Well, that's great, because people 100% do need help. Yet when we were listening to item 3, there was at least one man that talks about they were having frozen food just thrown at them in the hotels. So I was wondering what that's all about. But again, helping the most vulnerable people, a lot of the things this board does is actually creates vulnerability and creates dependency. This also says this item is to support sustainability goal number 4, to protect the health and well-being of everyone in the region. Again, that can't be done if we're living under a lie about you know what. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Had to have tissues up here. How sad is that? My person uses the name Audra, so vulnerable people. Oh, you guys, the way you word stuff, and how you're like, these people need food. We're going to present them with 3 meals a day. We have to feed the people in custody, right? I mean, if we don't, there's going to be severe problems. Yet then you look at the homeless, and it's like they're digging through a trash can. Can you imagine doing that? Any of you? Have you ever been in a place where you can't feed yourself? And you're just going, man, I wonder if I have enough money to do that. Am I gonna have to buy this crap? I'd love to buy organic food, but I can't do that. I don't have the money to do it. And then we have these people that are crossing the border. And again, I'm gonna mention it because this is what's happening. And they get 3 meals a day. They get shelter. They get all the things that they need to get where they need to go. And there's all these organizations engaging in it to make sure that they're okay. And then you talk about vulnerable people, and you're ignoring the actual vulnerable people that are sitting here suffering. And then look at all the people that were just here. Look at this tissue box that's been set up here. Why is that? Because people are upset. Because they're wondering, what are we gonna get? Are you gonna give us 1 meal a day? Are you gonna give us 3? Do we have to wonder? I mean, how are we even gonna get into a new place? We can't do that. But then as long as you're providing this food for people in custody, right, and that you've taken off the streets or done whatever with, there's a lot of vulnerable people here. And you guys ignore them. And it's really sad. Because you don't have to go through the same. And I only wish that you would so that you could see why it's so important. Because until then, you'll never know.
Next speaker, please.
You just don't know it yet.
Mark, so there's a statement here on this agenda item. At the bottom, in your sustainability impact statement, it says as goal 7, to reduce pollution and waste and demonstrate reduction in consumption of resources, austerity measures. Now, the thing is, why are these people hungry in the first place? I mean, why haven't you made a society where regular people with very basic jobs can make a decent living and have food? That's really the thing everyone should be asking themselves. That's absolutely criminally negligent that hasn't been provided by our government. And I mean, you shouldn't have to provide it, but there should be a framework for a system where we can make our own living. And I mean, when I was young, for one thing, there were a lot of people that were high on drugs, and they were actually functional. They had businesses, they had families, they were actually doing reasonably well. I mean, people that didn't really work very hard. They did go to work and they did have a job and they were functional. And they made a living and they were okay. We have nothing like that now. People need government help just to eat. It's absurd. These are austerity measures. They're being shoved on the public. It's caused by inflation mainly. And I've spoke about that many times. The Zeitgeist title, the film on YouTube that talks about Zeitgeist Addendum. That's 6 minutes and 40 seconds. You can watch it for 15 minutes. It'll teach most people about the Federal Reserve and how it's causing inflation. That's causing the problem. You guys aren't going to stop it. I know it's not totally within your purview to stop it, your power and authority, but it's your responsibility and duty to have told the people that that's what's causing it and that they need to address it.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. Start with our first caller.
Hey, it's truth, and just like I said, even 45 minutes doesn't cut it for lunch. I'm just not trying to eat here. You guys have no respect. And for the record, there's a ton of people on EB2 who have no idea what it's like to starve. Anyways, I think Tara pulled this out just because she wants to be here till 10 at night. But first, I like your signature, Sarah. I think that's probably one of the few things I like about this item. Second, let's start with science. This item mentioned low carbon intensity food. That makes zero scientific sense. All food, plants especially, require high carbon intensity to grow and also to provide us oxygen to breathe. So which supervisor doesn't like food or oxygen? $10 million for food for those caught in the county government web. strikes a racist, equity-informed sourcing policy. If the source either provides good quality food or they don't. Doesn't matter what their skin color is or what neighborhood they live in. Stick to something that makes a little bit of sense, like culturally informed food choices. The committee meetings should include input of people directly affected by this food. And the nutritional co-benefit should include offering organic meat when possible and work towards eliminating products with artificial additives, artificial preservatives, artificial colors, toxic pesticides, or genetically modified fake foods. And salt and sugar are not defined. Processed sugar is bad, but there's nothing wrong with organic cane sugar or naturally occurring sugars. People and policies need to be very specific or there's misinformation. Can't have that, Nora. And the San Diego Food System Alliance's County Food Vision 2030 has what they call a political compass. From their website, quote, the white dominant culture allowed this segregation of food options to take root. Healthy food access, food and farm labor, and land and business ownership are all divided along racial lines. We must transform all aspects of our society to ensure liberation, end quote. That is a racist communist organization that needs to be denounced and dismantled. Because the reality is it doesn't matter if I go to Food for More in Encanto or Whole Price Foods in La Jolla. It's all equitably expensive, and nobody discriminates and refuses my money. The only thing that's true is the monopoly of the food supply. But the question is everyone become a farmer.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Paul LeBold, I agree with pretty much everything Truth said, except that safeguard zip code in the bit about equity statement. I agree that vulnerable people, pretty much everyone else too, needs a good supply of food and food prep equipment. However, I would also ask that you're using to quality, non-organic, non-genetically modified food, which, by the way, is often cheaper and without a bunch of harmful chemical additives. It's healthier and also usually easier to digest. But, feeding illegal people first, feeding people on the basis of race, creed, color, whatever, that should be out the window. In this day and age, we have too many vulnerable people to discriminate by those factors. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Vice Chair Loss-Weimer.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I think big picture, I pulled this item because the county serves millions of meals to people every single year. Those are in our care and in our custody. And this contract we're looking at is a significant contract to provide food throughout our enterprise. So it's actually, I think, the discussion we just sat through regarding kind of good intentions that maybe aren't implemented as envisioned or hoped, and the hiccups with contracts, I think, illustrates why I have some concerns with this procurement contract. So I think just to remind folks, and this is partly for the public, but also partly for my colleague, Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, who was not here over the multiple years that we were sort of thinking through and working through with a lot of kind of help and back and forth with me and Chairwoman Vargas on how we could better support our local businesses and our local businesses, local agriculture, make sure that, working conditions are good for folks who are working in providing food to our communities and to our county. Making sure that we're really centering the values of equity and sustainability throughout our supply chain, not just in kind of the direct operations of the county, but we know that at least a third of our budget goes through contracting, and so it's super important that we're centering those values. So, as I think, just to remind everyone, we did a lot of work. There's a lot of advocacy and community engagement of folks who came out, kind of trying to drive forward what has resulted in policy B75, which is our sustainable, equitable, and local food sourcing policy, that has 6 value categories, which are local sourcing, equity-informed sourcing, elevated labor standards, organic or regenerative certification, low carbon intensity, and nutritional co-benefit. So I think when I pulled this, because honestly, I think I'm concerned about the structure of the contract, I think, or at least the structure of the proposal that's before us today. So I had some questions, and then I had some amendments that I wanted to offer for my colleagues' consideration. I think just the first question I had was obviously these 6 areas, and maybe if Jack wouldn't mind, because he's the expert, if that's okay, or I can just direct to you.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay,
And
thank
we
you.
can all partner together
Yes,
on
thank you.
whatever answers.
I don't want to ask Sarah the hard questions that Jack is the expert on, but yeah. Okay. So these are obviously like very niche and particular areas, and I know that the way that this is outlined, that it asks for, there sort of has 3 considerations in the awarding of the contract, of this big contract. One would be price. One would be ability to meet, volume and sort of the scale of what we need. And then the third would be the ability to enact programs and advance objectives and goals within these 6 areas. So I just wanted to better understand, obviously you guys are super expert on price and volume, but I wanted to better understand how you're going to, which experts are you going to enlist, and how you're going to kind of evaluate these responses to our RFP in these 6 value categories.
So thank you, Supervisor. So in direct response to that, we are going to take the 6. I wouldn't have put them in the same order that you did. It's going to be a best value, and price will not be the only determining factor. We will start in our solicitation. What we plan to do is take the work that has already been done and report it back to your board, as far as the experts that gave us the report, and also showed that we are already moving well along in some of these areas. But we are going to ask the providers that are going to be giving us proposals to give us a specific set of metrics against these 6 values. And those values will be evaluated as part of the source selection process. We will put together a cross-functional source selection team, the experts that can, both from public health and the other participants, to evaluate those proposals. And then the most important feature of this will be those proposals from our contractors will be incorporated into the contract as a requirement, and then we will monitor to that, and we will report back accordingly.
That's very helpful. So how will you monitor that? I mean, what would be, if they put programs forward, and you think, okay, this is a good program, how are you going to monitor achievement of that program? And then what's the remedy, or what do we do if we think that progress is not really being made?
So the first step will be really understanding where they already are as far as their achievement of the 6 areas, and also saying we want you to advance these and be specific in their proposals what that advancement is. And then we would monitor that and ask them for frequent reports or periodic reports as makes sense, to hold them accountable for that. There are many remedies we have under our normal contract administration, everything from payment withholds to other administrative remedies we can take during contract monitoring. If they're not living up to those self-determined, if you will, commitments to us that we feel aligned, that properly aligned with your board's priorities.
So in other words, if there's a program, if they put it forth in the RFP, hey, these are the goals we're going to achieve, and these are the programs we're going to implement in these 6 areas, and then they're sharing data and they're not really making progress on these areas, then you could withhold payment, or you might withhold payment.
We have many remedies, so we can see what the specifics is and what the causes are, and it'll be important to understand, are there underlying root causes for not being able to achieve some of these objectives. And I can't tell you as I stand here today what that realm of possibilities is. We expect, because of our volume, we expect to have large providers, but we are also going to ask those large providers how they intend to live up to those goals and contract and subcontract, as we spoke about earlier, with community organizations locally. All of them already do that to some degree, okay? So it's a collection of together, what does that look like? And
That's-
each of the vendors may look different, Supervisor, in how they propose to us. We're going to pick the
Definitely.
very best one that
That's
meets our
very, very
goals.
helpful. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what I would love, and I'm going to put this forward as a formal amendment in a moment, but just to kind of like build off of that, I think there's probably two areas where it would be really helpful to have metrics and performance metrics built into the contract, right? So one is, like you said, data. Specifically, like how are we doing now on kind of goal X, and how are we kind of improving that over time? So, if there's like a benchmark of we have 100 local businesses contracted, and the goal is to improve that, how much are we improving over baseline? That kind of like set of metrics. And the other area that would be helpful to sort of track and make sure we're really kind of making sure that we're prioritizing is how are we building capacity to do better in the future? Because it sometimes could be that the work isn't necessarily showing up in a specific hard metric, but there's sort of investments being made to do education to local farmers so that in the future they might be more competitive for those contracts. So like sort of acknowledging that there's two areas we could anticipate them working. So I think it'd be great to ensure that we have those kinds of performance, both of those types of benchmarks and program built into the contract. I think that, so just that's kind of putting that aside for a second. The other thing I just wanted to ask about, and just to better understand, I mean, I think this is a big contract. It's obviously, difficult to compete for it. But I think we also sat through like multiple hours of kind of foregrounding the importance of really building up capacity of local partners to be able to better competitively compete to be administrators and providers of contracts. So is there any work that you envision that we can be doing? I think I would be really interested in the work that we could do to improve capacity for the future for local, smaller providers to be competitive, acknowledging that they might not be competitive today.
Correct. I think it's continuing some of the work that we're doing and getting deeper with community engagement and causing connections with our larger contractors. For example, in this, I would expect that we would be introducing people that may be local providers to whoever that entity is that is the larger provider, and actually putting in that requirement that they subcontract with those community vendors and build and help mentor them to grow in capacity to the extent that they're able to at some point. But it's really a mentorship, connection and mentorship program, I'll call it.
That's really helpful. So I appreciate that. None of that's contained in our board item in front of us. And personally, I don't particularly feel comfortable moving forward with this board item without clarifying that a lot of what you described is built into the contract expectations. So that's what the amendments that I've written up. So I've shared them with Andrew, if maybe you could put them on the board. So I'll just read them. I think the biggest changes would be to add additional recommendations 2 through 4. So number 2 is really, frankly, as you said, right, direct that the contracts awarded include requirements that the providers track data and metrics as they relate to the fulfillment of the 6 value categories and show progress in each category over the 1-year term of the contract, specifically improvements from baseline, and further direct the contracts awarded include requirements that the providers present evidence of successful implementation of plans and programs to expand capacity in the future. So, very much along the lines that we just discussed. I think that the third additional recommendation would be, it would be helpful if we could return to the board with just a report of the data resulting from recommendation 2 prior to the renewal of the contract, just so we have some visibility into how that's going. And then the last one, it's 4th on here, but 3rd additional, would be to direct the CAO to develop an action plan to find, uplift, and cultivate local businesses who can serve as the providers for those contracts. So working in partnerships with local stakeholders and return in 90 days just to give us an update on what that action plan would look like. So that's my amendment. So I would love to make a motion to Oh, sorry, and just to kind of go back up, Andrew, one more thing? Oh, yeah, and I was suggesting that we change it to 2 option years instead of 4, just to to just acknowledge that we're asking a lot of these providers, and we want to make sure that, if they're not able to fulfill the contract, that we know we're not bound to it. So those would be my proposed amendments. So I would like to make a motion to approve this item with those amendments.
Just Vice Chair Lawson-Remer, if we could just take a look at the 90 days because you're asking for the stakeholder engagement and to develop the action plan, we will get as close to the 90 days as possible.
Honestly,
if that's
you
okay.
can take much longer. It's
Okay.
just, you tell me what would work. It's
Okay.
more like, I think this is important and we should work on it.
Sounds great.
So what would be?
I
what
don't
would
know
work?
because we need to evaluate it. How about if we follow up with your office on what would be
Why don't we say in 180 days or before?
Great.
And then
Thank
you have
so
lots of
much.
flexibility.
Thank you.
Okay.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Go ahead,
All
Supervisor.
right, this is a lot for me, seeing it for the first time. So are we asking in the number 2, the providers to, I guess, show progress in each of the 6 value categories? And that's something they have to submit to procurement, or how's that going to work?
Exactly, just what Jack had explained. So, I mean, nothing different than what he had just explained, but it wasn't included in the direction. So if you want to go ahead.
We will be requiring a periodic report, and I need to determine what is the reasonableness of that report. I would expect in their proposal response. Right now, our existing provider, who is Cisco, actually has an annual report. I don't know if they have quarterly reports that we can get, or something that's reasonable for them to produce, especially with regards to our contract versus their whole portfolio. Because obviously they provide food support to many large enterprises. So it would be part of that reporting mechanism that we would get updates regarding our specific 6 values.
Exactly.
Is that potentially too onerous to ask of our providers?
I don't think it is until I ask it. I will find out as part of the proposal process.
Because we don't want to
Frankly,
lose
Supervisor,
people either.
That's right. I would expect during my proposal process, I'm going to put it out there. Please tell us what the periodic reports would be that you would propose to me. And I expect that's going to be a competitive situation. They're going to put their best foot forward, and there's multiple large providers here that could meet our needs.
And just if I could add as well, one of the things, of course, for all of us, and I know you're aware of this, would be that potentially the cost could be higher, right? Because as we're putting our values for purposes of these 6 different categories and areas, pricing then may also increase from a procurement standpoint, depending on what those contractors are.
Thank you. I want to clarify, this is just about reporting. So this doesn't impact sort of implementation of the policy and like all those trade-offs. That's already built in. So I think this is not going to impact price because Jack's already in the process of doing best value, and it doesn't change the best value of assessment. This is just giving us the data to better have the visibility into how we're doing.
So if I may, what I would propose is, since we're reporting back within 180 days, I will be far enough along in my procurement process to know what that reporting frequency is, because I will have gotten proposals definitely by then, because we need to make an award in the fall time frame here, so we can bridge our contracts. So I will have more, as part of that report, I will tell you what our reporting frequency is.
Reporting frequency, and if you have kind of, I mean, I think that I think you always have a lot of variables, right? Especially if you're doing best value. It's much harder than price. And so I think you have a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts. You're going to have all these experts across the enterprise weigh in. So I acknowledge that there's going to be a lot of sort of triangulation. What I just thought would be really helpful as we kind of try to implement this new policy is that we have those metrics and those progress reports. And so we know, what are these goals that that these companies are moving towards, especially around, our local sourcing and our local businesses, and how are we doing on that? And so that we can have that visibility and assess, like, is this working? Is this making an impact?
Let me go ahead and have Supervisor Desmond finish.
Yeah, so where are these 6 value categories? I don't see them in the
It was in the board policy we passed about a year ago.
oh, yeah,
It's
I
there
remember
on
that.
Policy B75.
Supervisor, they're on
I have
page
no idea what
3.
they are.
Page 3 of the board letter.
Okay.
Let's see, guide the counties. It says local sourcing, equity-informed sourcing, elevated labor standards, organic or regenerative certification,
Okay.
low carbon intensity, and nutritional co-benefit.
So we're asking them to, okay, those are the 6 items that we're asking these food providers. And then, I mean, that's going to be, some of that stuff is hard to, I guess I don't quite understand all of it. Regenerative recertification, I don't understand, but maybe the food companies do. But then with the number 1, you're awarding the 1-year contract with only 2 option years. That's going to me, raise the price of the, if they got longer option years and they think they might still be on board, they might be able to give us a better price knowing they have 4 years as opposed to 2. So why that change?
That's a great question. I think what I am concerned is I don't want, if we have a, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this out, we're gonna put an RFP out, we're gonna get back a lot of like proposals. We're gonna evaluate which one sounds the best. I trust Jack and his team are gonna do a great job, pick the one that sounds the best. But then they're gonna go out and implement the contract. And what if it's not very good, right? What if it sounded great on paper, and then when rubber hits the road, they're not actually able to fulfill all the promises that were made, which we know happens. I want to make sure that we're in a position to be able to not just be on kind of the course of least resistance, which is, oh, okay, we're just going to like renew, but instead are able to make sure that our providers know we're going to be looking at how well they're doing in these areas, and if they want to be competitive the next time an RFP goes out, that they need to have, lived up to their promises. And so what I have seen many instances where we'll do, around here, where we'll do lots of option year renewals, and then there's almost like an autopilot where we just kind of renew and not as much accountability. So I want to make sure that there's an expectation that these are real promises, that we're not just gonna, like renew contracts.
If I may, regarding the automatic renewals, we do not do, on these types of contracts, we do not do an automatic renewal. We evaluate it year over year. To Supervisor Desmond's comment about going out to a marketplace with this size of a contract, having only a 3-year contract versus a 4-year contract will change their pricing methodology for all the reasons you can expect. However, when we award option years, we're under no obligation to continue into the next option year, depending on our reporting and their monitoring and how they're doing. And we could always go out early. We could go out after the first base year. We could go after the first option year. We would go out to the marketplace again. The other thing is the variability of the marketplace that we're in from time to time. I would rather have that a little bit longer so we have the options, because then to do this process over again, obviously is administratively, there's administrative effort to go through this recompetition.
That makes
again.
sense. Then with that clarification, I would be happy to keep it at the initial 4 years, as long as the kind of legislative intent is clear, and that I'm clear on the record here that you will be evaluating each year, kind of a fresh slate, blank slate, not kind of on an autopilot, and you'll be evaluating whether the provider really is fulfilling their obligations, not just in these value areas, right? Like also in best value and in volume and those other aspects as well.
There's really three avenues that I will look at: availability of the foods that we're ordering, because if I do not have the product and it's on time, that'll be an issue. The quality of the food, obviously, which includes some of these value adds, and also the pricing of it. Those are the three factors.
Okay, then I'm happy to take your suggestion, call it my colleague Supervisor Desmond, and stick with the initial 4 years with clarity that these are options on our end, but not an obligation. And if you get this data back and these performance is subpar, that we will be taking a second look.
Thank you. 'Cause I think you're already asking a lot from, or more from these providers with making sure they're abiding by these 6 different values. So I do think putting that and only the 2-year option. So I can support, I'll willing to support if you leave, with the 4 years in there, and then we work on those other metrics as it goes along.
Happy
so I
to.
think that's what you're trying to get at, isn't it?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Honestly, I think our last item was really illustrative of sort of some of the challenges that we've encountered. And I want to make sure that when we're, moving forward with such a big thing that could impact so many small businesses in our region and local providers, that we're really being thoughtful about how to track whether our policies are actually being implemented. So, okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
All right. We'll now move on to discussion item 10, approval of the temporary employment of Michael Workman in the critically needed position of Director of Communications Officer. I'd like to hand over the floor to our interim CEO, Sarah, for a couple of comments before we turn into public. And I'm going to ask the public, if you have to have a conversation, please step out of the building. Otherwise, yeah, that's your first warning, sir, for disrupting the meeting. That's your second warning for disrupting the meeting. Mr. Justin, you've been warned.
Thank you. Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. After nearly 25 years with the county, Michael Workman will retire on March 21st from his position as Director of the county's Communications Office, or CCO. The Director of CCO is an important position that reports directly to the CAO and serves as a key advisor for the CAO and county leadership. I believe it is important for a permanent CAO to be part of the recruitment and selection process for this critical position for our organization. Mike has agreed to return as a retiree rehire during this interim timeframe. Today's recommended action would approve the employment of Mike Workman as a retiree rehire Director of the county's Communication Office. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to open it up for public comment.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. Before we hear from members of the public, we'd like to know for the record that pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, prior to taking final action, the legislative body shall orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on the salary or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of local agency executives. This item includes Michael Workman returning as the interim Director of County Communications with an hourly rate of $83.27. With that, we have 5 individuals requesting to speak on this item, 3 in person, 2 requesting to speak by phone. We did not receive any e-comments. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 10 by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions. I'd like to begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition. As your name is called, please come forward. I'd like to invite Mark, Audra, Consuelo, and Michael Brando. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Michael, okay. The County Communications Office, the director of that, reports to the Chief Administrative Officer. How interesting is that? Now, this is not anything personal about Michael Workman, but it's about this role here, because this role is basically about propaganda hub update operations. The County Office of Communications, I actually go and look at the website to see what's being said there, what's being presented. and then other people ask, and then we start having conversations about it because it's so much propaganda going on. So wouldn't it be interesting if there was no office such as this at all until we can start telling the truth? It says that the equity impact statement allows for formulating policy, managing, and directing a centralized public information and media program that serves as the official channel of communication between the county and the public. Well, the last 4 years, there's been so much misinformation, constant. And that was not just the misinformation stuff that Eric and Nathan Fletcher used to do, but just in general, so much misinformation. So how about stepping back a little bit and doing away with this position totally? That would save nearly $300,000 a year. That's a lot. That's a lot. And then people wouldn't be exposed to misinformation. Yeah, consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Consuelo, so let me get this clear. You guys are needing someone to come back. Sure. So is he coming back only because no one wants to work for this corrupt corporation anymore? Can't find anyone just as corrupt. What else do I have here? Yeah, it's very telling when people who have worked in this building, like the lady who spoke up earlier, her name was Monica, who spoke up saying how, you know, she never thought she'd find herself here begging government and to do their jobs. Let's see. Yeah, that's all I got.
Next speaker, please. Also like to invite forward Gambler.
Thank you.
Mark, all these titles are on YouTube. So basically, I was just reading your statement here about this guy's job. And he basically is a liaison between your corporation and the public. So who is your corporation? What is it doing? Well, it's doing a bunch of UN Agenda 21 goals that are not sovereign, are totally against our country and our sovereignty and our rights as citizens. You can see these YouTube titles. Rosa Corey talks about this a lot. You can see this from 3 minutes and 30 seconds onward. You can see this one about the banking system and realize how corrupt the banking system is. Complete corruption. That this subsidiary corporation is partnering with these organizations and banks instead of stopping them. Then they're causing inflation. See this from 6 minutes and 40 seconds to 24 minutes. See this title to see they've invested all of our tax dollars for generations and own controlling interest in Fortune 500 companies, so much interest in every business around you. And they don't intend to even tell you about it. It's not in our budget. It's in a separate account called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. They're just going to hide it from you, say you're bankrupt in the end. And keep it for themselves. That should be divided among all American citizens equally. We should have the stock in that and dividends being paid to us. There would be no homeless, there would be no homeless vets. This one is Goodbye American Sovereignty. Trump signed it, Biden did not rescind it, and in the USMCA, the trade agreement that replaced NAFTA, it signed control over trade and immigration over to a foreign unelected council. We only have one American member on. He's not elected by any of us. Such a scam.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Know about the corporation, Mark.
Yeah, right.
Gambler here. I want to go ahead and talk to you about the county corruption. See, when I was fired, for some strange reason, I couldn't get answers from the union, like in particular getting a lawyer so that I could handle this properly. Some reason, my address was moved to the County of San Diego's address. Someone in the County of San Diego Registrar of Voters committed mail fraud. Now the Registrar of Voters wants to claim mail fraud does not happen. Claudia wants to protect voter fraud and issued me several cease and desist orders begging you guys to address this issue, trying to tell me to shut the fuck up. I'm not going to shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. I don't care how many threats that you give me. I don't give a shit. Obviously, I've told you as you're giving me the threats, they have no merit. Nothing that you guys do shows any fucking merit, and I'm tired of it. So, when you guys make a decision regarding me, when it finally gets to you, I hope you make the right decision, because regardless, any way you take a look at it, the 5 of you are going to make a choice regarding me. And if you make a choice to protect the system instead of weeding out the fraud that Michael Vu created, by all means, I'm hoping that each and every single one of you will go to jail and disbarred. Fuck you. Just wanted to let you know. What are you going to do about it?
Next speaker, please.
Can't move this anymore. It sucks. My person uses the name Audra. Michael is back here. Nobody really probably knows that. But I would like to say that I met Michael about 3 years ago when I first was coming in here, and he actually gave me some pointers on as far as addressing you guys, because I used to read stuff because I wanted to give you guys laws and things that you were breaking, but he told me to speak from my heart. And that's what I've been doing pretty much since then. And that's why I get abused in the hallway by the sheriffs and kicked out just for no reason. And it's sad because I think about all the things that you've been doing, Michael, and I see like your heart, but I also see that you are complicit in the things that are going on in the county as far as like sharing information that's propaganda. And, you know, there was a COVID misinformation panel that got brought forward when Nathan was here to discredit all of the people that were coming in and trying to redress our government about the things that we know are going on. And then I think about getting beat up and how that was never something that was ever going to be seen and heard. And then I think about you, Monica, and you're friends with Tasha, who came up here the last time we were here after I was kicked out for no reason. I had 3 warnings and I didn't even do anything. But she can come up here without a slip and talk to you guys for over 3.5 minutes. You know, and you defended her when she was taken out of a city council meeting and beat up. But because I'm white, nothing happens. And that's what's sad, is that it shouldn't happen to anybody. But it does. And then we talk about wanting equity and to be like, you know, just and fair. But because of the color of my skin, just like you don't like what happened to your family or people that you know, is happening to me and happening to other people. And it never gets acknowledged.
Time's up. We'll now hear from the individual that requested to speak by phone.
Sir, this is your first warning. You're disrupting the meeting. So all right, this is your second warning, sir, the blue hat.
The caller can please go ahead.
Okay, great. It's true. Oh, man, you blue hats and you red hats and all you dumb hats. Can you just be quiet and let me talk? Oh, man. I'm just getting annoyed at this point. The Director of County Communications, Michael Workman, is finally retiring, but there's nobody to fill the gap. Now it'd be funny to say, who cares? And truth be told, the county news articles don't usually provide any real news of informative importance, but there is one area that matters to everyone: the recordings of these meetings. The recordings that I have seen improvement in, with the camera crew panning when necessary, capture video, flags, and signs, and have increased the video volumes when I pointed out, and I appreciate all of that. Only 2 areas of improvement have not been met. 1, a video screen showing the supervisors during speakers' time for attendance and transparency. And 2, a clock on the screen for purposes of accuracy of the record. Even with 25 years of experience and on the verge of retirement, there's always room for improvement. What I don't understand is why Sarah can't just help pick. Are you not qualified? Apparently you are, because I advocated hard for you to have this job, and every supervisor obviously agreed with me. And you know what that means, Sarah? You owe me 10% for my campaign work. I saw how much you get paid. Come on. A workman's going to get $83.27 for 960 hours of work or less. That's about 120 days of work to continue to be the head propaganda spokesman for the county. And let me explain this about numbers, particularly for Tara. Numbers or data-driven deception delusion does not translate to real human effects from your decisions or wants. No more real promises or real lies. Focus or put a time limit on your mouth, because this item is actually somewhat important compared to the last. Important enough for me to say I second dumping this county job. No more county propaganda.
My name is Monica Montgomery. I'm a candidate for San Diego City Council District 4. I am a fellow community member and friend of Tommy Williamson, and I'm also an attorney.
Lost that lawsuit.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. I'm happy to make a motion. Is there a second? Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 13, increasing medical reimbursement rates to improve healthcare for nearly 1 million San Diegans. I'm going to go ahead and turn over to the public.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 12 requests to speak on this item, 8 in person, 4 requesting to speak by phone. I'll also note that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. For any members of the public that requested to speak on item 13 by phone, please dial into the conference line. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with those in favor of this item. As your name is called, please come forward. I'd like to invite Lorenzo Rodriguez, Fatima Ghulam, and Joni Vargas. If I've called your name, please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Fatima Ghulam. I have been a certified nursing assistant and healthcare partner at Sharp Grossmont Hospital for 5 years. I've been in the medical field for 15 years. Nursing assistant and healthcare partners do everything we can do to meet patients' needs, including bathing, getting them dressed, helping them to the bathroom, feeding them, checking their vital signs, and providing comfort in their most vulnerable moments. We are the backbone of the hospital. I do this because of my community is very important to me. I even have a special connection with the people in East County, where sometimes we get patients that only speak Arabic. I'm originally from Lebanon. I speak multiple languages, and I also help them out, even if the patient is not assigned to me. I explain in Arabic what's going on, so the patient, they feel that they have someone they could trust and feel better, someone who actually knows what they're saying when they need to go to the bathroom or hungry. This matters to me, because I want to take care of all the patients in the hospital who need help during their most difficult time. Not only do I love what I do, but I also love the amazing people I work with. We all know how good we work together. But despite my passion for my work and love for my patient, it's getting more difficult to continue at work. We carry extremely heavy workloads, and the workers and the patients suffer as results. One of the worst days I came to on a shift when there was 2 of us, CNAs, to 38 patients. Many patients have suffered from stroke, meaning they need a lot of special care. Helping just one of them safely go to the bathroom would take a very long time. While I was doing that, I knew I had 18 more patients waiting on me that also needed to use the bathroom, take a shower, needed to be changed, needed to be comforted, or have their teeth brushed, fed, or much more.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you so much. Esteemed members of the Board of County Supervisors, my name is Joni Vargas, a phlebotomist from Sharp Grossmont Hospital, and a first-hand witness to the daily narratives that unfold within its walls. Hospitals, in their essence, are a reflection of our society's heartbeat, vibrant, diverse, but also deeply revealing of the chasms that exist within our healthcare framework. My role is unique. I'm not just a phlebotomist, I'm a listener, an observer, a confidant to those whose veins tell stories of hardship and resilience. These stories form a tapestry of lived experiences that vividly illustrate the urgency for enhanced Medi-Cal reimbursement rates. The initiative spearheaded by Supervisor Lawson-Remer is not merely a budget line or a policy change. It's a lifeline for the countless individuals I encounter who navigate the turbulent waters of healthcare accessibility. In the microcosm of our hospital, we see the reality of healthcare disparities. We see the rich and the poor side by side, yet worlds apart in their access to care. We see the outcome of a society that has yet to fully embrace the necessity of uplifting those in need. It's not just about providing care, but about providing quality care that empowers individuals not merely to survive, but to thrive. Quality health care is not an abstract ideal. It's a concrete necessity that becomes all too well when a patient looks into your eyes seeking reassurance that their health is not determined by their economic status. This initiative is a declaration that San Diego, will bridge the gap. We will ensure the marvels of modern medicine are not reserved for a few of the privileged, but are accessible to all who call our city home. Today, I urge you to consider the stories that will never reach your ears, the faces that you will never see, and the lives that are profoundly affected by your actions. By supporting enhanced Medi-Cal and reimbursement rates, you're choosing to invest in the very fabric of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Final call for Lorenzo Rodriguez. I'd like to invite forward the speakers in opposition: Mark, Audra, Michael Brando, Consuelo, and Oliver Twist. If I've called your name, please come forward. Again, please state your name for the audio record.
Mark, of course, reimbursement sounds good. I read your statements, 88 cents on the dollar. However, it's important to see what kind of medical care the hospitals are providing. Well, here's Michael Yaden. He's, as I recall, vice president, he was vice president of Pfizer, stating that the vaccine, and whether you like it or not, he's the vice president, stating that he would have never used the mRNA approach that they did for the vaccines, which they say works so well, they want to use it on all vaccines now. And he says any 101 immunology student would know that first year never to take this approach because it creates spike proteins that are toxic. His own statement. He doesn't think it can be accidental. So you can see that title. These are all on BitChute, YouTube, or anyway. This is a YouTube video, or some of these are just titles of articles. So these are about excess deaths. We have an incredible amount of excess deaths that aren't being explained. Insurance companies, of course, are raising rates because of it. U.S. troops still train on weapons with no risk of brain injury. This is how much they care about our soldiers working for us. They shoot, I forget what they are, like bazookas, and they're so close to their head, they just cause damage. Nora, who is our chair here, is also the chair of SANDAG. And if you look up this title, this meeting from last February at 1 hour, 22 minutes and 50 seconds, shows her working with the UN, people from Europe, with the UN, that's right in the title, the UN Habitat, to limit your movement. Every totalitarian society takes your weapons and limits your movement. There are some others. The legal immigration isn't helping the hospital.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi. Good afternoon. Oliver Twist here. So to borrow a device from Michael, I support the premise behind this item. However, the way it's presented and the lack of government accountability, I cannot support it. It's because of fiscal sustainability, and that's something that is lacking. I keep seeing sustainability as listed. You list an item every time, you talk about it, the importance of it, and yet we don't ever see anything for fiscal sustainability. You're having to dig into your reserves and now actually subsidize another entity, the city of San Diego, to make up for their shortfall. Thank you, Jim, for your pragmatism in getting that money back and accounted for. Think of me, I am a government watchdog and steward, but if you prefer softer language, you can think of me as your accountability partner. And I am here to demand accountability. What the public may not know is that 1 out of 3 people in the County of San Diego are on some form of social services. And I heard at the Know Your Rights Symposium the other day, 50% of babies born in the county are done so under Medi-Cal. So again, I'm asking you, where is the sustainability for that number and how long can it last? 60%, 70%? Just a second, please. So Tara, you've noticed I've posted a couple things today. I'm not sure when you forgot about customer service, but I would like some customer service and some paying attention. I feel like that you are very deficient in listening to we the people. You talk differently when you run for re-election, and then you sit up there and you ignore the public. It's one thing to ignore the people that come here routinely. You may think of them as marginalized to discount our voices, but when you ignore the flood victims this morning, that was shameful. You missed half of the testimony, and then the other part, you just sat there and looked like a lump on the log. We need a cardboard cutout.
Next speaker, please.
Michael, over the last 4 years of the counterfeit pandemic, some of the best people I have met are nurses. Nurses who were terrorized, nurses who were traumatized about the push for the bioweapon serum injection. This item addresses hospitals and hospital administration. We got to see the vile nature of some of the local hospital systems I didn't know about before August 2021, when Nathan Fletcher paraded this host of CEOs and administrators of all of these medical systems, and they were promoting the bioweapon serum injection. How about that? And now you're saying you want to raise rates to help fund these systems? Many people are actually taking health into their own hands now and not relying on these systems. And I do have empathy for that young lady that spoke, saying how hard she works. And I've talked to nurses about how hard they work. But yet, until people start telling the truth about what happened the last 4 years, what's happening now with people going to the hospital because of the bioweapon serum injections, then nothing's going to change. This is all going to be more about moving money around and sustaining lies. That's the kind of sustainability that goes on here. Lies and people like Tara Lawson-Remer ignoring people who speak at the podium. We do not consent.
Next speaker, please.
Consuelo, more lives here begging government for help. Everything negative is a result of this local government that has their filthy hands taint everything it touches. All done on purpose, all done to fulfill an agenda. Government is huge now, and so are our problems and poverty. Everything government does is to keep society debilitated and entirely reliant on them. So much is lacking with this local government, including accountability and integrity. There's no trust anymore. There's no transparency. People have lost hope and faith in these local supposed leaders. I want to remind the people here and who are listening and who are concerned about the future of their children, our children, the future of humanity. It is up to us. Please get involved. Please pay attention, not only when the boot is directly on your face or you're affected, but it's a trickle. It's a trickle down. It's just a matter of time when all these people here on the dais will be eventually affected by their own policy. It's hard for them to imagine it, but it's not even around the corner, it's here. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
My person uses the name Audra, so it's interesting because I've been on both sides of, I've taken care of people, but I've also needed health care. Being paralyzed for 8 years and really sick with MS and believing the medical system and how, being on 100 pills a day was gonna make me well, and it wasn't. It was making me sicker and it was killing me. And, I've been in a place where, I used to have to wear Depends because I couldn't control my own faculties or whatnot. And that sucks. And I'm sure none of you have been there. But like having to have a nurse come and, wait for them to go to the bathroom. They do a job nobody wants to do. But also none of you have been in a place where you've needed that. And where you've relied on, where you thought, they're telling me the truth, right? But then once you see a different side, and once God gave me another chance at life, because I shouldn't be here, but I am, I saw things for what they were. And it's like with all this COVID stuff and all the things like Michael's saying, like when we can actually acknowledge what's been going on for the last several years, then we can get somewhere. Because people shouldn't be incentivized to kill people or get a COVID test that's positive, put somebody on a ventilator, give them vaccines, whatever it is. It's a money-making business. That's why all of the medications they give, there's incentives to prescribe it. Right? And then we don't think about all the people that are suffering because of it. And as long as we ignore it, then we can just go along to get along and things kind of perpetuate. But when we're ready to acknowledge the truth, that's when things will change. And until then, all things are going to happen or people are going to suffer. And a lot of it is going to be at your hands.
We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Good afternoon. My name is Monica Montano, and I'm calling on behalf of Scripps Health, a nonprofit integrated healthcare delivery system serving San Diego for more than 100 years. We support this proposal that aims to increase access to equitable health care for California's Medicaid, known as Medi-Cal beneficiaries, providing health care coverage to nearly 100,000 low-income San Diegans and approximately 325,000 children. The county's engagement on Medi-Cal reimbursement shortfalls is important. Exploring opportunities to increase Medi-Cal reimbursement to providers in San Diego, including a comprehensive analysis of Medi-Cal reimbursable services, and adding these reimbursement rates to the county's 2024 legislative program priority issues is critical as we all work towards improving Medi-Cal reimbursements, which have remained at the same rate for more than 10 years. While expenses for patient care, including salaries and benefits, supplies, pharmaceuticals, utilities, and more have increased exponentially. We see these challenges at Scripps Mercy Hospital San Diego, which is a safety net urban hospital with 85% of patients on government-sponsored health coverage. It is home to a level 1 trauma center serving the communities from downtown to the U.S. border and provides critical behavioral health care services. We also had more than 12,300 visits from San Diego's homeless community in 2022. Lower reimbursement rates lead to limited access for our most vulnerable population, making it harder for them to find accessible healthcare services, contributing to healthcare disparities as low-income populations are disproportionately affected by these reimbursement challenges. We appreciate all of your work on this important proposal to help ensure San Diegans have access to the health care they need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll hear from the next caller.
Paul LeBeau. One of you wants to spend between $800,000 and $1 million to study Medi-Cal reimbursement rates, which is a state program. I believe it's actually originally a federal program, and not in his, her, or your control. If you want to improve health care, you will have to improve doctors, and not simply reimbursement rates. For instance, there seem to be a lot of doctors still pushing mRNA vax and discouraging other remedies for COVID, which, by the way, have less side effects. Or there are people who seem to have ignored the TB spreading in this county until now. The cases have increased 17%, and we're being notified months later of possible exposure. We have all sorts of testing, which is oversensitive or tests for the wrong things, and most standard medicines these days have so many side effects, it's no wonder people are dying younger and at a greater rate. But the art of checking for drug interactions is tricky, and some doctors won't do it. So, you know, I really think that doctors are a big factor in the need for Medicare rates, and at a time when you can't feed all the people in this county, you'd rather feed illegals. I mean, it's ridiculous. You aren't really taking care.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
It's true this item refers to people who've registered for the California Medicaid program as our county's most vulnerable community members. Question, who is that? What if I don't identify as a community member? Am I still eligible? Or are the only people who count the ones who jump a wall or barbed wire and who know nothing about this country? Will there even be anything left for the so-called vulnerable legal county residents if we have 10,000 or more people coming a day? Because healthcare is not a right. It's a paper promise offered by deceivers. One can be born free, but they're not born with a doctor waiting on them, not unless that doctor is an indentured slave. Government health care isn't even real health care. Ask an American veteran who got their rightful free health care, who got a liver biopsy they never even consented to, or who were given a known toxic combination of drugs. Those are both real stories. So unlike what this item claims, the entire Medicaid system is precarious. Precarious for those who risk their lives when their lives are in the corporate government's proven uncaring hands, because this is a business. Just like this item says, the government's only paying the hospitals back 88 cents to every dollar they spend. They're behind in their payments by $25 billion. Name a regular person who can rake up a tab anywhere near that high without going to prison. Providers aren't attracted because government clowns don't pay their bills. But now they want more of our money to pay what they should have properly budgeted for. But how can they budget if they keep adding new community members who don't even financially contribute anything to the community? This raises the rate for individually, privately paid health care for regular people who are already struggling because of other government interference. And politicized labor organizations, CBOs, and consumer advocacy organizations should have no say in how people's tax dollars are spent. Government talking heads who pontificate new faux rights are the substantial, problematic, discriminatory hypocrites who issue low reimbursement rates for their paper promises, which tear into pieces with ease like the recycled garbage they're made of. This is another county and state-created crisis, Monica. Let the money flow, though, right?
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the public comments. And I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Chair, but I just wanted to say that, this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Closing the inequities in healthcare was the reason I ran for office, and I think everybody, I've shared that I've worked in healthcare for 30 years and reducing and really focusing on increasing our Medi-Cal reimbursement was really a top priority, but because of what it meant for access and doing that work. But it wasn't really until my family was directly impacted around access to healthcare that really made me make the decision to run for supervisor. And I think that Nick Machoni, who's probably hearing right now, remembers when I came to the meeting in November and he said, what's your why? Why are you running for office? And I said, this isn't sexy for folks, but honestly, it's trying to figure out how we're going to increase the Medi-Cal reimbursement rates so that our communities can have access and close the inequity gap is the reason why I'm here. And so I'm glad to see that this item is before us. I'll turn it over to the Vice Chair, and then I have a couple of comments to make on this issue.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank the leadership of so many members of our community who've been working on this, members of our providers and doctors and hospitals and our healthcare workers and our healthcare unions. I appreciate the ongoing leadership of Chairwoman Vargas as a consistent, passionate voice fighting for Medi-Cal and for these issues, and really looking forward to continue working with you on this as we move forward. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who has been working on this day in and day out, and particularly all the members of our Medi-Cal task force that's been meeting and talking about, what could we do to improve Medi-Cal reimbursement rates in San Diego County, because it's an unfulfilled promise. There's about 1 million people on Medi-Cal in our region. And a lot of people know that they, quote, have health insurance or should be able to get access to a provider or get in to see a doctor, but they can't. And at the end of the day, because our reimbursement rates are too low, there's not enough workers, there's not enough providers, people are suffering burnout, our workers are suffering burnout, and it's become a really, really toxic cycle for so many people who are trapped in our broken healthcare system. This issue of Medi-Cal reimbursement rates that are just far too low hurts the people that it was designed to protect, but it also erodes the quality of healthcare for every single resident of San Diego County. When our hospitals are overburdened because they are not getting paid and reimbursed sufficiently, people end up in the ER. And even those who are not on Medi-Cal begin to see the quality of their care suffer. So this is an issue about healthcare access that is central for every single San Diegan, in particular the 1 million individuals in our region who rely on Medi-Cal to keep them alive, right? That this is their safety net, this is the healthcare that we have. We know that our hospitals receive about 88 cents for every dollar spent on Medicaid, and that last year resulted in an underpayment, I wrote this down, of nearly $25 billion. And we in California rank near the bottom when it comes to Medicaid reimbursement rates. So what we are hoping to do, and the reason I brought this board letter today, is to approve a series of studies and movements and actions to begin to tackle these issues of Medicaid reimbursement rates. And we're really focused on enhancing access to and quality of healthcare by increasing reimbursement opportunities for healthcare providers. So I'm asking county staff to conduct an analysis of Medi-Cal reimbursement services, including identifying ways to leverage existing resources through intergovernmental transfers and seeking ways to obtain Medicare matching funds, looking hard at the things that are working and are more impactful in other parts of California and across our country, to identify ways to optimize Medicaid revenue and reimbursements for services provided by counties, Also exploring new and additional sources of funding that could be available to the county to increase Medi-Cal reimbursement rates, and looking at ways to enhance reimbursement rates and incentivize providers to expand access to Medi-Cal services in San Diego County. It's one of these issues that is really technical. It's, as my colleague said, it doesn't sound sexy, but it is so important to the lives of so many people, and it is, I think, of central importance. And I know that when I think about my own life and, what motivated me to get involved in public service, when I was very young, it was healthcare. The notion that in the richest country in the world, people should be able to see a doctor. People should be able to get the care that they need to keep them alive. And when there are treatments available and cures to diseases and diagnostics that could allow us to live a better quality of life or to live at all, and some people are being denied those opportunities, that is a grave injustice. That is a horrific injustice, and that is not something that we should stand for at all in our country, and certainly not here in our region. But unfortunately, that is where we are. That we are in a moment now where there are opportunities for care and treatment that are being denied to people because our Medicaid reimbursement rates are too low, that it's creating a crisis in our healthcare system. So nobody should suffer, nobody should die because they can't get in to see a doctor. That is a moral failing, and it's something that we need to take action on here in San Diego County. I just also want to uplift that as part of this proposal, I'm also pushing for action to reduce prescription drug costs by having San Diego County advocate for legislative and administrative actions to move the needle on the huge cost of prescription drugs that are weighing down so many people in our region, people who can't afford life-saving medicines because these drugs, which are being sold for sometimes 10 or 20 times less in other countries, are just completely out of reach for people in our region. So we need to do a lot better on prescription drug prices, and that's another thing that we're going to be looking on as part of this initiative. So there's a lot of this board letter is very complex. I appreciate my colleague, Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, for agreeing to serve on this ad hoc subcommittee with me as we kind of continue to work on this issue moving forward. I'm looking forward to working on this with Chairwoman Vargas, and I know that we have some projects that we need to do as well. So, I think this is a small bite at the apple, but it's an important step in the right direction, and I would be grateful for my colleagues' support. So thank you.
Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate this coming forward. I certainly do support raising the Medi-Cal reimbursement rates. As we know, they're already too low. However, I'm sorry, I can't support the ad hoc committee in recommendation number 6. It's not that I don't trust you, but it specifies that the ad hoc subcommittee, which is going to be 2 board members, Supervisor Lawson-Remer and Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, misspelled her name. But anyway, just 2 supervisors providing input regarding the feedback obtained by the stakeholders, the 2 supervisors providing input regarding the updates received, and 2 supervisors providing input to the interim chief administrative officer on the development of the progress reports, finding and recommendations, what's to be submitted to the board. I don't agree that really we need an ad hoc subcommittee for this effort, and I think it's a worthy effort. But like I said, nothing against my colleagues, but there's no reason the whole board shouldn't be engaged in this. I think, and I'm not done. I see you going for your mic. Yeah, I have no reason that we shouldn't all be. And ad hoc committees are not in public, and therefore they're not as transparent as I think we could be. So we should be transparent, especially with something like this. I think staff could take direction, staff could handle this very well, and come back to the full board incrementally, make sure that they're on the right course. And I can't support this as written, and I truly do want to see increases in Medi-Cal reimbursements. I think it's a very well thought out board letter. It's on the right track. But I think as a whole, the board should be engaged with this very important effort. So what I'd like to see is we strike item 6, and on item 3, we change the words ad hoc subcommittee and replace with Board of Supervisors.
Can I respond to that? I'm happy to make a motion to bifurcate this. I would like to move forward with the ad hoc subcommittee, but I do want to give you the opportunity to vote for the pieces that you support. So what I'd like to do is make a motion to move forward with this, with items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the items as recommended, but allow a bifurcated vote. So my colleague could vote no on 6 and rest, and which is the ad hoc subcommittee.
It'd be 3 also because.
And yes on the others. So, thank you.
Huh? Well, 3 as well, yeah, because it says ad hoc subcommittee. I just think it should be a whole Board of Supervisors. This is too, I think, very important, and
I'm happy to amend that to say after updates to the Board of Supervisors and the ad hoc subcommittee, if that would allow you to support that item.
Let me tell you why. I remember during the COVID days, we had an ad hoc subcommittee, and the rest of the board would find out things at a press conference.
No, I hear you.
That was not, and we'd have to ask, and well, who made that? How was that decision made? So I just think we don't need that mess. I think we can. This is important that we all should be able to, all offices.
I appreciate that. I think my experience has been that there's a lot of sort of nuances, and there's going to be a lot of need to check in and continue moving forward. And I think the work that I've seen that's been really successful has had an ad hoc subcommittee. For example, I think some of the work that we've had on SB 43, et cetera. But I do also agree about the point around transparency. I think it's a both and. I think there's value of having an ad hoc subcommittee to continue driving the work forward, but I'm also comfortable to acknowledge that that transparency is important. So if it would allow you to support 3, I would be happy to amend that to say offer updates to the whole Board of Supervisors, including the ad hoc subcommittee, so that there's no questions around information.
So on 3, you're taking out ad hoc subcommittee and put Board of Supervisors.
I did not say that. I said offer updates to the full Board of Supervisors, including the ad hoc subcommittee.
So just for clarification, SB 43 is not an ad hoc subcommittee.
Sorry if that, I didn't mean to muddy waters. Apologies, I'm not trying to.
No, it's okay.
I'm not trying to muddy, it's okay. I just I don't want to get us distracted. I want to acknowledge that the importance of the information sharing that I think my colleague has identified, because I do think that is really important to have that kind of information flow and that transparency, and balance that with what I think is a really important need to have a subcommittee that can really focus on driving the work in a day-to-day way. So I am happy, and again, Supervisor Desmond, if you can't support it, you can't support it, but I'm happy to make amendments to earn your support if that's something that you're interested in. And the motion I made was to move forward with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and to bifurcate that so that 6 is voted on separately. But if it would allow you to feel comfortable in supporting 3, I'd happy to amend 3 to read to offer updates to the entire Board of Supervisors, including the ad hoc subcommittee, if that would make you more comfortable. Okay, happy to do that, because I want to acknowledge that has been a concern I've shared in many cases as well. So
it usually bites us, but anyway, okay.
Okay, and for the record, because I was on the subcommittee as the vice chair from the COVID, I don't think we can. Yeah. Oh, the one I was in was we were telling you everything that was going on. But anyway, the reason why I share that is because I think it's important to make the distinction under an emergency circumstance, which is what we were under, right? And this is not an emergency issue. I mean, it is an urgent issue for our region and for our communities, but it wasn't. The subcommittee that was created specifically to an emergency that we were trying to address. A couple of things that I just want to add on this is that I think this is a very complex issue that, like I said, very, very near and dear to my heart. And I think what is really important is we're talking about Medicaid reimbursement rates, but what we're really talking about is human beings being able to have access to healthcare, and how do we close that gap to make sure that in our communities people have access to that healthcare. And I think I'm going to be super honest. A subcommittee that doesn't include all of us makes me a little bit uncomfortable, but I understand some of where it's coming from but I want to make sure it's clear, because out of the so there's a total of 325,000, nearly one third of the children ages 0 to 18 have access to Medi-Cal in the county of San Diego, over almost 980,000 people, and out of those, 33.59% Medi-Cal recipients are from the Latino community, and out of those, over 63% are in my district. So for me, it's extremely important that somehow I'm engaged in this process, and so I don't know how the subcommittee is going to work and how I get to provide feedback and make sure that our communities are part of that. It's a really, I trust you, and so I'm having a really hard time with it, but I want to make sure that I put that on the record, because for me, as this is something that I've been working on for a long time, and our communities are directly impacted, and it's the South County communities that are really impacted, that is a little bit of a challenge. But you know, we've done a couple of different things on this board to be able to expand access to healthcare, including making sure that as of January 24th, we were able to make sure that we work together so that we have 4 healthcare plans, right, that were very focused on how we were going to access this, challenging the state a little bit, and around how we were going to make sure that people had access, and knowing the facts, right, that, you know, sharp Medi-Cal reimbursement rates are 70 cents per dime, even though the rest are 88%. So the low reimbursement rates, you know, and the contributing factor, absolutely an issue that we are monitoring. But I want to make sure that we don't forget what this is all about, right? This is about healthcare coverage, and I know that you and I are going to be working on a couple of other items, Vice Chair, so I trust that we're going to be moving together on some of these items. But it's really about basic healthcare for our communities, and the expansion that's been made by the governor on Medi-Cal for other communities that had never had access, including our undocumented population, is something that I'm absolutely interested in better understanding and how we're doing our work as we're moving forward. And so this is about emergency services, hospitalization, maternity, newborns, rehabilitation, substance. There's so many issues. And so I just want to make sure that as this ad hoc committee is moving forward, that we don't forget that some of us are also doing that work parallel on the ground. And how do we do that, I think, without duplicating efforts, I think is going to be a really important piece of this work. And so, you know, Medi-Cal is very complex. It's a mixture of federal, state, and local dynamics. And I think everybody's aware of that. And I think all of us here are very, very concerned about the future of it, especially, I think, the work that you've done, Vice Chair, around making sure that we have a workforce that understands what the need is. But I do have a couple of questions. And so I think as it refers to the behavioral health, right, in the mental health plan in our county, in the middle payment form, what are the impacts around the negotiations? Because I want to make sure we're not crossing lines anywhere. And so I'd like to ask staff to really share some of that dynamic. And then I also thoughts about, you know, is there any conflicts about the non-interface? I know that when we were doing the work about identifying who the plans were going to be, we had to be very careful about where we could and couldn't, and what we could say and could not say. So I just want to make sure that we put it on the record so we're very clear. And then also making sure that the providers understand and really understand what the leverage of, maybe it's not called an ad hoc group committee, maybe it's called a working group that brings people together. I don't know. I want to get legal to really provide a little bit more insight, because I understand the intent and I don't want to get away from it.
If it's okay, I will start, and then certainly Claudia, and then Eric and Luke with anything that you might think should be added. I appreciate the question that you're asking about behavioral health services, and I believe the Vice Chair, if you look on page 6 of her board letter, the very last paragraph refers to the dynamics that we're really in the midst of right now, which is we, from a behavioral health services standpoint, are in the midst of negotiations right now. And so as we're looking at the work, the very important work that would be moving forward, whether it's an ad hoc committee, working group, whatever the body would be that would be really reviewing this, we would be excluding the behavioral health services facets from any of those discussions that would be taking place as part of the ad hoc and the working group, because of conflict of interest, interference, as those negotiations for rate setting are taking place with those providers. So as we're looking at the recommendations, really as you look at page 2 and page 3, recommendation number 1 and recommendation number 2, what we would be saying is direct the interim chief administrative officer to conduct an analysis of Medi-Cal reimbursable services provided by the County of San Diego. My recommendation would be that we say excluding services provided by behavioral health services and behavioral health services network of contracted providers. That same language being inserted into recommendation number 2 so that it makes it very clear what the intent is, and that BHS, for purposes of the rate setting, the negotiations, would not be part of the topic of conversation. So with that, Claudia, if you have any additional thoughts.
The charter has, both the charter and county policy, board policy, has very strong non-interference provisions. So clearly, as the chair has indicated and the ICAO has referenced, the negotiations ongoing by BHS cannot be interfered with, impeded, influenced in any way, nor directly negotiated with the providers. It has to occur through BHS's ongoing work. So that BHS is excluded generally from all of this area, and that is that strong reference in page 6, making that very clear in that regard. In addition, the language in regards to the ad hoc and the information BHS can present is very limited and does not include the references to contracting. It's the way it's written is they would be able to provide information that is germane but is not related to essentially any of the ongoing negotiations or anything that would impact, influence, or impede their ability to do what they need to do with the providers.
And I just want to say I appreciate Claudia's help on crafting this, because I think that's a really good flag. And we tried to be we were very specific and intentional about ensuring that the scope of activities pertains only to policy matters and should no way being construed as including or concerning negotiations of specific contracts or specific contract terms. Kind of repeat that language is sort of all over the place in this board letter. So I appreciate the support of County Council, because I think that was really important to ensure that that's clear. And that we don't have any implication at all that there's anything other than that. That's
So just for clarification, do you recommend that we add that into the board letter so that it's very clear?
The language by the ICAO, the exclusion? Yes.
For recommendations 1 and 2.
Yes. I think that would make it abundantly clear to everybody, especially those stakeholders who may have not have that clarity.
Would you be?
Could you state it again? Mm-hmm.
Read my handwriting. So it would be direct the interim chief administrative officer, so we're on recommendation number 1, to conduct an analysis of Medi-Cal reimbursable services provided by the County of San Diego. And the addition would be excluding services provided by behavioral health services and behavioral health services network of contracted providers.
I'll be honest, I'm not comfortable, no, and I'll tell you why, is because what I think that the analysis, you guys should be doing the analysis regarding everything, but what we don't want is for this what we do need to exclude is anything to do with specific contracts. So if you could propose some narrower language that's about excluding contract negotiations instead of entire scopes of work, I would be comfortable with that.
I can't craft that right now, but as it relates to really taking a look at, because I believe your intent on page 6 was to achieve that.
To achieve what?
So as we're, if you look at your last paragraph on page 6, of note is the fact that behavioral health services statutorily operates as the county's mental health plan. Owing to the fact that the county's MHP is in the midst of behavioral health payment reform driven by Medi-Cal transformation, inclusive of rate setting and provider-specific negotiation, rate setting and reimbursement dynamics within the MHP will not be addressed in this action. If we can just carry that into what we're going to be coming back with, Vice Chair, on recommendations 1 and 2, we're comfortable with that. Whatever the language might look like, I'm just recommending.
I would actually be comfortable with taking that entire piece, that whole paragraph,
and putting
it.
Perfect.
Yeah, we can take that whole paragraph, because I think what I'm hearing you say is something I completely agree. We want to make it really clear that anything regarding rate setting and provider-specific negotiation is not included in the scope of the ad hoc subcommittee.
That's right.
And so I think that it would be helpful. It's not that I think it shouldn't be in your scope. So number one is about your scope, which is the interim chief administrative officer. But I think what would be a good place to put that would be in 6, which is about the scope of the ad hoc subcommittee, because that's where it would be appropriate to exclude it.
The negotiations are going to be in confidence and in private, and what we want to make sure is that we are not establishing this situation where the impression is that that information would then come to the ad hoc.
I agree.
There are assessments that are occurring behind the scenes for behavioral health services. That's the whole process that they pursue.
That I understand completely. That's why I'm saying that I think it would be appropriate to exclude it, that exclusion from the scope of the ad hoc subcommittee.
Great.
But I wouldn't want to exclude it from the scope of your work.
No,
So that was what I'm just trying to clarify, because number one is about what we would ask the CAO to do, which is different than which is like a broader set of a broader endeavor than what would be in the ad hoc subcommittee. So if you want to make it I'm more than happy to, we could even add just to make it clear for everyone, so we're not like trying to wordsmith, but we could do a number 7, which is to like something along the, just take that whole paragraph in the end of page 6, and add that as a recommendation number 7, so it's not just in the background, but is in the recommendations.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Happy to do that.
Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
I need clarification of what number 7 will be one more time.
I'll read it. Okay, this is appreciate, so it's the last paragraph in number, this is the one our CAO pointed out. It says.
It's in 6 right now. Oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically taking that paragraph that's in the background, but making it part of the legally binding recommendations.
Okay.
Andrew's put it up on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
I will amend my motion to add a 7 and appreciate the guidance of our CAO. Thank you.
Okay, and so that, I think the record also, legislative record, will be clear as to where we are, because I was going to ask about just the conflict of interest language and making sure that we all know, provided this passes, moving forward, where those lines are drawn. Did you have anything in addition to say to that, Ms. Silva?
No, I think this pretty well captures it. And of course, as we move forward, as the ad hoc committee move forwards from the staff level, we'll always revisit to make sure that there's nothing that comes close to or near any appearances of potential conflicts or perceptions.
Okay.
As well as interference issues.
Okay. So I want to kind of talk about address a little bit some of the concern around the ad hoc committee, right, for good reason. One is making sure that the populations that are most impacted are represented at that table, and also to make sure that the board is fully notified as to what the ad hoc committee is doing, what recommendations we're coming up with, what information is shared there. So I think that there should be, let me move to the recommendations again, but maybe a time certain as to when we come back to the board, if there's not one.
There's not one, and I'm happy to have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you, what do you think is reasonable based on your vision of like the meeting and,
I mean,
when we
it's
would
a
have
great
anything
question
to share at all?
That's why I didn't put one in, because I kind of thought I figured how this was going to proceed is that the CAO was going to begin this assessment, and then once they had some kind of a beginning of a plan, they were going to come check in with us. So I better ask her, when would it maybe?
I just want to be mindful,
Yeah.
Of our colleagues and the concerns, and
Yeah.
making sure that, we're not
I mean, we
kind of
could
going
do,
off on our own tangents.
we could even do something really short, like every 3 months, and if we have nothing to report, we just say, we haven't made a lot of progress, but at least that way, there's some transparency.
Let's do 120 days.
Sure.
Okay, and we can add that the ad hoc committee shall report back to entire board 120 days from the time this is passed.
And your item number 4, just so we are all on the same page, says that by the end of the calendar year, a progress report would be coming to the board.
Okay.
But I think that's for the CAO. So I think what I'm hearing my colleagues suggest, and I'm happy to, I think that's a great idea, would be to add like a B, C, D, and F to 6, a 6F. The ad hoc committee will report back in 120 days or less to the broader, to
I
the
think
full
just
board.
for an update is fine.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to, I want to be a part of something that everyone is on board with and providing that input to us. So I think that's a decent way to handle it. And I know that we're on the same page with that, so.
I think it's a good idea. It makes us meet and work faster because we're really accountable.
We'll, instead of throwing those timelines out there, we'll make one for ourselves. Okay. All right, so thank you, Vice Chair, for bringing this forward, and to your staff for working on this. Also want to thank our chairwoman for your heart for this subject and all things healthcare, and making sure that everyone does have access to not just healthcare, but good healthcare and quality care for people. And I think that's what this is all about. And we can see, you know, as we have this reimbursement discussion, which is a very complex discussion, the hope is that it would result in a wider range of healthcare professionals that are willing to take on patients that we know need the care so much. That it would improve staff recruitment, retention, better wages, benefits, improve the patient-staff ratios, reduce complication rates. All of those things is, I think, what we're shooting for here, and moving in the direction of what the CalAIM will do to reform this system. I think we're just on a good page of keeping up with all of those things. And at some point, there are so many discussions around this issue. At some point, maybe we can get them all in one meeting and have a robust discussion about our plans and how we are moving forward to achieve these goals that we're setting forth here. So I am in support. I will second the motion since it's been changed a little bit, but I will go ahead and second, and I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues and receiving input as we go along. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. I think we bifurcated until you just said it, and we'll just put it on the record, if that works for you. Okay.
Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye, noting for the record that Supervisor Desmond voted no on recommendation 6.
All right. Item number 14, notice public hearing fiscal year 2024-2025. I'm going to hand over the Florida County team for a presentation, and then we'll call on speakers from the public.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. Today we come before you seeking approval of the Housing and Community Development Services Annual Plan for the fiscal year 24-25. Housing and Community Services Housing and Community Development Services, or HCDS, administers a variety of programs that increase affordable housing opportunities, provide critical services to vulnerable populations, and improve underserved communities. Our focus today is on programs supported by entitlement funding through the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. This plan leverages more than $14 million in HUD entitlement funding to provide affordable housing development, first-time homebuyer programs, infrastructure investments, and public services for vulnerable populations. Last year, this funding served more than 135,000 county residents. The recommended projects in the annual plan today are based on needs identified through extensive community engagement, board priorities, program requirements, and goals outlined in our 5-year consolidated plan. To discuss more about the plan, I'm joined this afternoon by David Estrella, Director, and Kelly Salmons, Deputy Director of HCDS. David?
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. HCDS has two roles. First, as a county department that administers federal, state, and local funding, and second, as the housing authority, with the primary role of administering the public housing and housing choice voucher or Section 8 programs. In each role, we are required to submit plans to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Today, we are presenting HCDS's annual plan, which is a plan for the HUD entitlement programs. Tomorrow, we will be coming back to the board as the Housing Authority to present the annual agency plan for public housing and Section 8. HCDS administers 4 HUD federal entitlement programs: the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program, which supports communities by addressing local housing and community development needs; the Home Investment Partnerships program, which funds the development of affordable housing and rental assistance; the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG program, which provides direct services to persons experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness; and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with HIV/AIDS, or HOPWA program, which provides housing and services to persons living with HIV/AIDS and their families. To guide the use of HUD entitlement funds, HCDS develops a strategic plan every 5 years, called the Consolidated Plan. The current Consolidated Plan covers the period from July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2025. The current Consolidated Plan strategic goals are to increase affordable housing opportunities, enhance community infrastructure, prevent and end homelessness, and provide housing and support for individuals with HIV/AIDS. For each year of the Consolidated Plan, we follow an annual cycle that includes 3 critical steps. First, the annual plan strategy determines how the county will prioritize projects for funding in the upcoming year. The FY 24-25 annual plan strategy was adopted by the board on October 24, 2023. Second, the purpose of today's hearing is the annual plan. The annual plan provides the list of recommended projects for funding for the next fiscal year. The third and final step in the program cycle is the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER, which details the outcomes and accomplishments from the previous year. I will now pass it to Kelly to talk more about this year's plan.
Thank you, David. Stakeholder and resident input are essential components throughout our annual plan process. The recommended projects presented in the annual plan align with the Consolidated Plan goals and the annual plan strategy, both of which were developed utilizing robust community feedback. The draft FY 24-25 annual plan has been available for public comment since February 9th and was shared through HCDS's listserv, announced in 7 local newspapers, posted on HCDS's website, and shared through the Engage San Diego County website. Today's hearing serves as the conclusion of the public comment period. As David mentioned, HCDS administers 4 entitlement programs, including the CDBG program. We receive approximately $4 million in CDBG each year and focus on the urban county. The urban county includes the unincorporated county and 6 participating cities of Coronado, Del Mar, Imperial Beach, Lemon Grove, Poway, and Solana Beach. Other jurisdictions receive direct CDBG funding from HUD. Participating cities are smaller jurisdictions that do not administer CDBG themselves. These cities identify projects approved by their city councils, which are then administered by the county on their behalf. CDBG applications open annually in the fall to nonprofits and units of government. During this period, HCD offers in-person application workshops to provide technical assistance and support to interested applicants. The largest CDBG investments recommended in this year's annual plan include $975,000 for a home repair program that aids low-income homeowners, particularly seniors, to make safety repairs and ADA improvements and encourage aging in place, and $800,000 to support land acquisition for an affordable housing development in Imperial Beach. Other recommendations include housing services and support, including a North County shelter program and fair housing services, community infrastructure investments such as new sidewalks in Spring Valley and a backup generator at the Ramona Senior Center. And finally, public service programs, including meal delivery services for seniors and the court-appointed special advocates, or CASA program, for foster youth. The HOME program provides funding to support affordable housing opportunities for lower-income households in the HOME consortium area. The HOME consortium includes the urban county, as well as the cities of Encinitas, Carlsbad, La Mesa, San Marcos, Santee, and Vista. Other jurisdictions not noted here receive direct home funding from HUD. Home funding is anticipated at $3.5 million and recommended for affordable housing development and tenant-based rental assistance. The first-time homebuyer program will also be supported with prior year home funding. Last year, the county's home program provided rental subsidies to more than 250 households and supported the development of a 100-unit affordable housing development in San Marcos. The county also receives approximately $370,000 a year in ESG funding. The ESG funding provides funding for direct services to persons who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness within the urban county. A Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA, is currently underway for fiscal year 24-25 ESG funds. The program can support shelters, homeless prevention, or rapid rehousing activities. ESG funding typically supports shelters and services for up to 400 individuals and families a year. And finally, the HOPWA program provides affordable housing and housing-related services for individuals and their families living with HIV and AIDS. The County of San Diego receives an allocation of approximately $6.2 million that serves the entire region of San Diego. HOPWA is a critical piece of the county's Getting to Zero implementation plan, as without adequate housing, one cannot achieve health. The HOPWA program currently supports emergency and transitional housing, permanent housing operations, long-term residential care, and supportive services to individuals living with HIV/AIDS and their families. Annually, the HOPWA program provides housing options to 600 households, as well as supportive services and resource referrals. Today's action requests authority to reallocate up to $14.4 million in prior year entitlement funding. Most of these reallocations stem from ongoing programs or technical constraints that dictates when funds are considered to be committed, even if they have already been awarded. All reallocated funds proposed here today have been awarded and are crucial for maintaining the success of these programs. The largest reallocations are from the HOME program. Approximately $10 million in HOME funds have been awarded to 7 different affordable housing developments throughout the county, including the planned Paseo Norte for seniors in Ramona, shown here on this slide. However, the funds cannot be officially allocated until the loan financing closes. In addition, approximately $2.5 million in prior year funds supporting the first-time home buyers program and $500,000 supporting tenant-based rental assistance. CDBG reallocations totaling $600,000 include funding reserved for participating cities due to prior year cost savings, affordable housing developments, and the continuation of services for the home repair program. And finally, approximately $800,000 in HOPWA reallocations will be used to support the expansion and continuation of the HOPWA tenant-based rental assistance program. Reallocations not approved, planned programs and developments are not able to expend in the upcoming year, and funding may be at risk. I will now pass to David.
Thank you, Kelly. The HUD-funded programs included in the plan support every single domain of the county's framework for ending homelessness by providing permanent affordable housing, emergency housing services, diversion, and upstream prevention. They also support the county's draft housing blueprint by investing in the production and preservation of affordable housing, as well as promoting equitable communities. Today's requested actions include receive public testimony and approve the FY 24-25 annual plan and corresponding resolution, approve the reallocation of program funding as necessary, authorize actions necessary to execute and award funding, and authorize adjustments to funding to reflect changes from HUD if necessary. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to open it up for public comment, and then we'll have board discussion.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 11 requests to speak on this item, 6 in person, 5 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we received 12 e-comments, 10 in favor and 1 in opposition. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 14 by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers, starting with the individual in favor. I'd like to invite forward Jessica Munoz, followed by the speakers in opposition, Mark, Audra, Michael Brando, Consuelo, and Gambler. I've called your name. Please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Mark, what an absolute failure, like you failed every single year for more than a decade, and you will again. Well, you're not addressing inflation again, and as I've told you probably more than 30 times, you could 3D print 10 by 10 foot structures. They'd be mobile. They could hook into each other vertically or horizontally. It would be easy to build 12,000 of them. Right now, it says you've been allocated over $30 million. That would be twice as much as necessary to solve your entire homeless problem, completely and totally. In fact, you'd have lots of money left over and more than enough to run a sewage line and an electrical line to these places where you could mobily move the structures. You could use your existing community service people. There are people that help the homeless on the street. They could be helping them reintegrate into society, get jobs. You could give them trolley passes and help them set up bank accounts. They'd have a place to live. This could be done very quickly and very easily if you weren't worried about making profit for your corporation and continuing the problem to continue making money, which, by the way, where's this going to go? Well, you're using our tax dollars to buy our property to rent back to us, or for programs that ultimately you're just using our money to buy more of our property away from us while you don't solve inflation. So the problem is going to be exponentially worse. More people are going to become homeless. You're going to acquire more of our land. You're going to fail more as the problem gets worse. And you could build 50 times as many homes with the Appy's Core 3D printing if you weren't worried about making money and not subsidize it with our taxes.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Michael,
I've said it before, and I'll continue to beat the drum about this, continue to beat the drum about this, continue to beat the drum about this.
that was Sean at City of San Diego, but you know, I can say the same thing. I'm going to continue to beat the drum about this. Eleanor, I hope you're watching. I know you are. They've got these pretty little handouts of beautiful colors of absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I echo everything Mark just said. This is all about moving money around, not really helping people. I love this phrase, county framework for ending homelessness. And the fact is, it's extraordinarily worse. You drive around, there's tents, there's people laying all over the place, lying all over the place. It's an absolute disaster. And you people are always saying, COVID did this, COVID did this. No, you did this. You did this, all of you did this. And Nathan. He's probably still watching too. Absolute nonsense. It also says that this is about a vision of having a just, sustainable, and resilient future for all. No, that's a lie. That's about creating weaknesses in people, creating dependency. So many people were traumatized over the last 4 years that a lot of people have kind of given up hope, which is really sad because there really is hope. Not here, but there is hope. So again, more nonsense. Oh, the sustainability comment, the impact statement. It mentions community level health. There is no such thing as public health or community level health. There's individual health. There's your health, there's my health, there's your health. See, this is all about collectivism. We are a country of individualism and freedom. We do not consent.
Consuelo, it says, this item supports the county's vision of a just, sustainable, and resilient future for all. Such a load of junk. Pretty happy words, empty and worthless, just like this local government, which is currently in the process of destroying our county. Money here, money there, money goes everywhere, but to the people in need, and in need right now. This will never be solved. It's too lucrative. These nonprofits are not in the business of solving anything because they're profiting off of the problem. We see what happens when programs are successful. They become defunded. Again, it's lucrative. You're wasting not only our money, but our time with these stupid agenda items that keep coming back. Government doesn't care. And that's all I wrote.
My person uses the name Audra. Thank you for the propaganda update, but I'm going to warm hand that off to Jim. He's not here. Sarah, I'll give that to you. Because it's so funny. It is lucrative, right? I mean, if there weren't problems, we couldn't pretend to fix them. That's why it'll never go away. Like, it will always get worse because the more money, like Nora, you were just saying, like, we want to receive as much money and funding as possible earlier today. And it's like, you didn't want to say, we want to build more homes. You're like, because you love budgets, right? You guys are like, we love money. It makes the world go round. It gets all this craziness going on. It gets these people up here doing whatever they got to do to be puppeted around, right? How much money are you getting to do that? No, not that much. More than the people suffering, right? And you sit here and you're like, we're going to get all this money to help homelessness. And then it's like every time we do a count, it gets worse. It doesn't matter how much money you get. That's what's so funny. It's like, imagine anybody else that's got a business like that and you're like, you're completely failing at what you're doing. The business would shut down, and yet you guys are still here day by day, right? Pretending and just like, we're gonna get money, we're gonna help these people, we're gonna give this to nonprofits. You know what they're gonna do? Pay the CEOs and totally not do what they're supposed to do. But we'll give them more money because they said they're gonna help, right? I mean, it's crazy. Like, we had a nonprofit, we'd be so rich right now. Actually, we wouldn't, because we don't do nefarious things. But, you know, that's just the way the world works. So when things are lucrative and you want to do land grabs, it's not really about helping the people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to wait on a list for decades. We're going to help you at some point. It's going to be good. Just wait. Wait's what broke the bread.
Next speaker, please.
Gambler here. Yeah, just wait. I've been waiting for how many years, Michael? Was it that you fired me? How many years ago was that? 7? Close to it? What was that after? It was after AB 1875 that you campaigned to have all of California to go to a vote by mail state. Isn't that correct? Then you guys changed my mailing address so I could not get help. Isn't that correct? And you want to tell me that you guys are here for the people. That's bullshit. Matter of fact, I heard about you, you don't have any skill, or very little, and you push people around thinking that it makes you look stronger. It doesn't. Your old staff is so happy, the fact that you no longer are there. And that's makes me feel good, because you are going to have to make a choice regarding me. That's the funny thing. I didn't want to hurt Helen. I liked her. I have no issue making you deal with their problem. Zero issue with that. I have zero issue with all of that. By the way, a wavy line that happens for signatures could be copied by a lot of people. And if I bet you, if I were to take a look at where these wavy lines are coming from, they're coming from these homeless encampments that you guys are funding. so you could filter out the votes so you could stay in office, so you could keep Governor Newsom in office? How many signatures are just a wavy line? And how many of those signatures come from one location? Mirroring what exactly took place in Jersey.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the individual that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Jessica Waddell. I'm writing this letter on behalf of Empire Mountain Little League regarding the community development block grant. Unfortunately, we have recently found out that we were not chosen as a recipient for this grant. I am the vice president of this league and have currently been an active volunteer for the last year, and the current president has been an active volunteer for the last 10 years. We are a small league of approximately 200. And are one of only 2 organizations that are backcountry.
Jessica, we're having a hard time hearing you. If you'd like to.
Oh, is that better?
A little bit better, but we're having a hard time hearing you. It appears as if you're far away from your phone.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
That's much better, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Our communities cover a shocking 660 square miles. Our families travel over 20 and sometimes 30 miles to our Little League fields for games and practices. To drive from Tecate to Jacumba and then to Descanso, you would drive over 100 miles. This is a staggering distance, but one we contend with daily. The only baseball fields available to host our 19 T-ball through major teams are the Campo Little League fields. It is made up of fields, a T-ball, minors B, minors A, and a major field. These fields are in need of constant work and are only here by the sheer will of community volunteers. We need to fertilize them, mow them, and rake them. We fight limited water to try and keep them green, to have them push water off them when it rains because of the uneven infield. Our current fields are not big enough for our growing league, so we must double up on field usage as we are actually a field short to service our minor C teams. Therefore, we must rotate the T-ball and minor C fields. These fields are owned by San Ysidro Health. However, they're inherited from the previous organization but do not maintain them in any way. They are a health facility, not a field management organization. This means Mountain Empire Little League maintains these fields. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Paul Bold, you really should do the report that this housing agency is about to give you first, to see if the funds reallocation is even justified. I mean, some of the things I heard, the goal to prevent homelessness and homelessness. I mean, are you kidding? And let's say $800K for rent under HOPWA. Is that a joke of some sort? I mean, that will get a few people in the door, hardly anyone. And $370,000 for housing, some kind of emergency housing program. I mean, what are we looking at? 2 or 3 people? I mean, these figures are ridiculous. So, I mean, why even bother? You may as well listen to the report and see whether any of the suggestions are even realistic. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hey, Truth, to reiterate the point, Michael said there's no hope in the meaningless rainbow-colored paper. The hope in the chambers is like spotting a real-life unicorn then. And Paul just said, let's give up on this no plan. I agree. $30 million in federal debt dollars in the form of CDBG cash, home investment partnership pennies, Hopwell Washingtons, and ESG greenbacks to play the communist-style 5-year plan, pay-to-play game with a federally approved annual plan, with a federally approved strategy for the plan without a strategy, and a consolidated evaluation report that gives the federal government the numbers they want to see. When this item says, quote, the draft annual plan will be updated to reflect any appropriate revisions from public testimony, end quote, I know that's a lie. And so when it says, today's action memorializes the steps taken to engage the public, I think that means the death of faux attempts at engagement with the public about what will be done with our money, ending in the memorial of hearing opposition to wasteful spending of that money. This item contains no information on what exactly decent or affordable housing really is. Some may find 10 shacks to be decent enough and very affordable, a lot more than those expensive stack of facts popping up like weeds next to the trolleys full of violent attacks. I'm curious about recommendation 8. How many projects were canceled or incomplete? Has there been an audit? How much money was left over from those unfinished or canceled projects? Also, what is a citizenship participation plan? Is that actually in effect? The equity statement mentions forums being held over the last 4 years, but I never even heard of one forum. And did they actually happen in person from 2020 to 2022? I'd like to see a restart since there's no way real or relevant feedback was received during the lockdown era. And it's kind of interesting that the AIDS-related housing program is still going when AIDS has been on a continual decline. And there's been so many advancements in treatments and prevention. And regarding addressing people with AIDS and other health issues, next time, Kara, put your money where your mouth is and don't lock down the county and tell the hospitals not to see patients. If you really care about health care, start putting care in health. Try it. Maybe you're a veteran.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the goals that are set forth, especially the focus on homelessness. We all know that the main issue with homelessness is affordable housing, providing housing that people can't afford in San Diego County, which is a challenge. So I want to know, just based on the annual plan and what was in the presentation, what we have before us, it seems to be that there are a smaller number of new units constructed than I would like to see for the amount of money that we're looking at. With the $14.3 million in the HUD money allocated for this year, can you tell me why we're showing just the 20 new housing units? Is that accurate? How do we retrieve the information, and how do we have to report it?
Yes, thank you for the question. So the 20 housing units for this annual goal is based on our consolidated plan goal is over a 5-year period. So the 5-year goal being 100 has to be broken down over the 5-year period evenly. So typically when we fund affordable housing with our HUD entitlements, for example, we mentioned a new 100-unit development just opened up in San Marcos. You may see 0 for a couple of subsequent years while it's under construction, and then you'll see the 100 there reflected in 1 year, and then again in our 5-year comp plan goal.
How do we come up with that goal of 100 units over 5 years?
That was came up during our consolidated planning process, and I would have to go back and look at the data that gathered that back in 2022.
It's a data-driven process.
Yeah.
And of course, for the unincorporated areas and also the cities that we may have an agreement with, is that, how many cities do we have agreements with?
Yeah, so our home consortium, which covers our home funding, our home investment partnership funding, is unincorporated and 12 cities. Our urban county, which covers the CDBG and ESG programs, is the unincorporated and 6 smaller cities.
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate you answering my staff's questions as well as we asked them, but the concern is that I want to, as we move forward, I think this is are we in the last year? Okay, so next year we're going to have, well, probably this year, we're going to start planning for the next 5 years.
Correct.
I really would like to understand how we come up with the number of units that we're, putting as a goal for ourselves as the county, especially receiving the millions of dollars. And my understanding also is that this money could be used to contribute to other affordable housing projects, not as the full amount, but as assisting sort of as bridge funding, so to speak, for those other projects. Is that accurate?
Correct. We typically leverage our HUD entitlement funding with other funding sources. Our home program, we receive a little over $3 million a year, which goes a lot longer, a lot farther when we're matching that with other funding sources like No Place Like Home or Innovative Housing Trust Fund. So yes, we do match those to really stretch those dollars.
Okay. Just, 100 units is not a lot over 5 years. So I would like to just be updated on, in the next annual plan, consolidated plan, how we're coming up with the number of units that we're striving for. With that, Chair, I will move staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to second. Any additional discussion? Just thank you. Thank you for all the work. Really appreciate it. All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
All right. Next item on the agenda is item number 15. Thank you for your work, by the way. Notice public hearing issues on revenue bonds by the California Municipal Finance Authority to benefit of Republic Services in an agreement amount not to exceed $400 million. I'm going to hand it over to the county team.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We're happy to provide a staff presentation if you'd like.
Sure. No, we don't need one? Okay, so just have them come up here, and in case we have any questions, people can ask, and then we're going to go ahead and open it up for the public.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 8 requests to speak on this item, 5 in person, 3 requesting to speak by phone. Also note we received 1 e-comment in favor. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 15 by phone, please dial into the conference line using the instructions. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition. As your name is called, please come forward. I'd like to invite Mark, Audra, Michael Brando, Consuelo, and Gambler. I've called your name. Please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Mark, thank you. This is a perfect example of how you guys screw everything all the time. People will want to see these videos. This company owns the world. This is about BlackRock and other companies too. So Republic Services, they're the company that's being given this contract for doing disposal services in many locations. They're a national company. They have shareholders. So that cost us an extra lot of money. Somebody's making a profit off this. And who is one of the main top institutional shareholders? BlackRock Incorporated, Vanguard Group Incorporated, and State Street Corporation. Now, if you see this video on YouTube, this will show that these companies own most of everything in the world around you. Unbelievable. This shouldn't even be permitted. It's beyond any monopoly laws that were ever imagined. It's just absurdly corrupt. And anyway, that video's on YouTube. And then there's also some information. Now, as President and Chief Executive Officer at Republic Services, Inc., John Vander Ark made $9,835,000 something in total compensation. Of this total, $1,075,000 was received as salary, $2,849,000 was received as bonus, 0 was received in stock options, $5,660,000 something was awarded as stock, and $250,787 came from other types of compensation. These people are making a fortune.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
If you were black, then let me keep speaking.
Michael, I'm not a Republican, I am not a Democrat, but I do want to thank Jim for adding some robustness to some of the conversations today and at some other meetings as well, past meetings. About this item, the bonds, that was really interesting reading about how Republic needs funding and, the mechanism that's used here with your hands in it to approve bonds. But dovetailing on what Mark was just saying about the owners of these companies, how will people know that the cost of these bonds, because they'll have to be paid off with interest, how will people know that those costs won't be passed on to the people that are using those services? Again, it sounds like a big money game going on, although obviously financing is necessary. But sincerely, how will people know that the cost of these bonds will not eventually be passed on to the ratepayers in increases? That's a relevant question. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Consuelo, yeah, regarding what you mentioned about Jim, there are roles being played, and some people have to appear like they're concerned. And it was said by the late, great George Carlin, it's a big club and we ain't in it. And that is so true. And nobody here is in it. Well, maybe. But we are all going to be affected, and nobody, at least in this room, comes out on top.
Next speaker, please.
My person uses the name Audra. That is so true. It's so funny to see all these things that you guys do, the way that, you try and act like you're being transparent with stuff. But everything happens in plain sight, right? You got to tell everybody what you're doing. It's just like saying he has to do that. So then it's like the people it's like we told you, right? It doesn't mean that we don't do it. We're just telling you. It's whether or not you see it. And so it's like we use all these debt instruments, right? Like money's debt. It's not, we just print it out of thin air. I mean, it's just and then it has value. I mean, I might as well take a poop and say it has value. I don't know. And it does. Actually, we may be eating that one day. So I have been saving it just in case to be sustainable. Because that's so important these days. But it's just funny to see how everything works, where it'll be as long as you're saying it's for public benefit, things like that, this is really gonna benefit the public. And so we're gonna, throw money around to all of these different entities, right? To just make everything kind of happen the way it does. And like Consuelo was saying, it's you're not in the club. That's what's funny is you guys think that you're in that club. You're not in it. You're just being puppeted around to do what they need to do to enslave all of us. And you're enslaving yourself in the process. And you just don't see it because you think that you're doing public benefit, public good, things that are going to help the community, right? But in reality, you're up here for a reason. I mean, the government was designed for a reason, not to help us, to do all of this nefarious stuff. And then people get on these dioceses and they think they have so much power. People put on costumes and it's so powerful. Watch them take it off and see how much power they don't have. Just like when you guys aren't up here on this dais. And then you want to treat us the way you do and look down on us. It's kind of sad.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Gambler? Yes.
Hey, how you guys doing? I have no idea what we're talking about, but I wanted to mention something about the last one. See, I went to go visit one of my friends that I grew up with, probably one of the greatest con men I've ever met in my entire life. He served 5 years, got out of prison, and ended up working for the most major companies in the entire world. Well, at the end of the year, after I met with you, I went out and visited with him. And he told me something very interesting. I mean, he's dating the dude he's husband with the dude that creates the ads on Google. But besides the point. He told me about AIDS, how he was so damn happy that there's a blue pill that the gay community knows about. This pill prevents you from getting AIDS. They are so damn happy that they're keeping that information out from the straight public. See, payback's a bitch. That's what he told me. See, when Fauci decided to tell everyone to be scared to death of gay people because they had AIDS, stay away from them, don't drink from the same water fountain.
Can you please explain to me how this is on item number 15? Item number 15.
Yeah, you're correct, so I don't give a shit.
Public hearing,
So,
issuance of reference bonds for the California Municipal Finance Authority.
what, you want to interrupt my last 30 seconds because I'm exposing your fraud? I feel I have no issues with it. If you want to go ahead.
So this is item number 15, sir?
Hold this meeting out for 5 minutes.
Item number
If you
15.
want to take away my 15 seconds, when you go ahead and have conversations and leave, when we come here to go talk to you and you don't even fucking listen to us,
Item 15,
you want to
sir.
go ahead and interrupt my time.
You got 7 seconds.
You want to
Item
interrupt
15.
my time. Okay, thank you for getting it back and backing your ass down because you're a bitch.
Oh, God bless you.
We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Paula Bowles. I'm glad to hear that the Republic Waste Services is doing something about methane. We hear much too much about decarbonization. Methane is far worse. I think that these bond funds will be used wisely. I'd be a little concerned about paying them back if they have to keep increasing the rate. But, I mean, I guess as long as we're talking about the Republic Waste Services, who basically picks up our trash, why don't they clean up all the trash in the Tidney River Basin? Or I'm sure there's trash all over the county they could be hoping to clean up as well. I mean, just an idea as long as we're giving them all these bonds. Anyway, I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hey, it's Truth. I'm here to take out the trash, and that includes dirty mouths or even dirty policies. I actually love when the county gets to pretend they care about what people have to say about debt bonds in the California Municipal Finance Authority. And I found this one somewhat interesting. It says, quote, one or more series of revenue bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $70 million as part of a statewide issuance of revenue bonds not to exceed $400 million, end quote. So the state's issuing $400 million in debt bonds with $70 million going towards San Diego County for landfills. State garbage, as usual. But what happens if the other counties approve of this debt issuance, but this county disapproves? Would it still apply everywhere else? Has that ever happened? I think the supervisors should disapprove so we can find out. The borrower being Republic Services, Inc., a foreign company registered in the state of Delaware, that must be making a lot of money off of other men's trash. Republic's affiliates, Otay Landfill, Inc. in Chula Vista and Sycamore Landfill, Inc. in Santee will use this money supposedly for a public benefit project. But there are no details on what they will do with these millions. So how are we to know? Are they buying new machinery? Are they hiring more workers? Will they expand the landfills? Will they raise the bills to pay for these debt bonds? We know the answer is yes. And where does the county redirect the $991 they always make from these debt bond issuances? How come that change isn't refunded back to the taxpayers as a New Year's gift? Nora, do you know what red envelopes are? Come on. And this is the perfect time to give out a PSA about garbage. 1, avoid people who are garbage. And 2, don't ever throw your toxic lithium batteries into the garbage. They're combustible and repeatedly catch fire at landfills.
And never, this is very important, put lithium batteries in the trash. They have 2 to 3 times a week at this facility. And these lithium battery fires cannot be extinguished in the regular way. No matter how much water batteries to be put on them. They're not going to be extinguished.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. I'm happy to make a motion to support. Is there a second? Second. All right, we have any additional discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
All right, the next item on the agenda is thank you very much for everything. Item number 16, 17, and FP1, we're going to take all those together. I'm going to hand the floor to the clerk to read the items being heard.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. Items 16 and 17 are Item 16 is the fiscal year 2023 through 24 second quarter operational plan status report and budget adjustments. Item 17 is capital improvement needs assessment for fiscal years 2024 through 25 through 2028 through 29 and fire protection district. Item 1 is the fiscal year 2023 through 24 second quarter operational plan status report. These items are being heard concurrently, so members of the public that requested to speak on these items will have 2 minutes to address the board on these 3 items. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. We're here today to provide an update on economic conditions as well as the county's financial status, including our second quarter budget performance. We'll be using this time this afternoon to talk about how we're preparing for the fiscal year 24-25 operational plan, including the county's capital investments. For the discussion on our capital improvement needs assessment, which you may hear us refer to today as our CINA, I'm joined by Marco Medved, who is the Director of the Department of General Services, and Brian Albright, the Director of Parks and Recreation. Starting with the state budget outlook, staff are closely monitoring the state budget outlook. The fiscal year 24-25 proposed state budget was released by the governor in early January with an estimated budget deficit of $37.9 billion. This is conservative, according to the Legislative Analyst Office, which estimates collections are $73 billion below budgeted levels through fiscal year 24-25. This variance is due to differing assumptions about future revenues and expenditures. And so we are anxiously awaiting the governor's May revise to gain a full understanding of the potential impacts to the county. We also look closely at key indicators of the regional economy. Overall, though inflation has slowed and there's some steadying, there's still an amount of uncertainty that we're monitoring. As we know, inflation is a mixture of many different measurements, so the slowing we're seeing is largely because of the decrease in the price of natural gas, but other cost drivers that our community experience could still be increasing, as is the case with shelters and homes. This is aligned with the observations of the Federal Open Market Committee as well. After steadily increasing the federal funds rate since early 2022, the Federal Reserve is now holding steady at an average of 5.3%. Although they've seen inflation ease, it remains elevated, and the Federal Open Market Committee does not plan to reduce the range until it's gained a greater confidence that inflation is decreasing. The federal funds rate, just as a reminder, is the interest rate at which banks can borrow excess cash from each other, which impacts mortgage rates. The housing market anticipates future changes to the federal funds rate, which has caused mortgage rates to decline in the past few months. And that's good news. Locally, we are also keeping an eye on the real estate market and the assessed valuation, which in turn impacts the county's general purpose revenue, or what we sometimes refer to as GPR, which is the county's discretionary revenue. As you can see with the green line representing annual growth in assessed value, we are projecting a notable slowdown in the growth for fiscal year 24-25. While general purpose revenue is still expected to grow, the milder growth rate is reflective of the observed declines in the real estate market activity, which is offset in part by the continued rise in home prices. The economic environment not only impacts the county's revenues, but our expenditures as well. The market performance of the retirement fund is a primary factor in the county's retirement cost. This chart shows market value investment returns since 2014. The Retirement Board has adopted an assumed rate of return of 6.5% annually, and any amount in variation from this return will have an impact on planned contributions to the retirement fund. Most recently, in the current fiscal year, market returns through January are positive at 5.3%. While this is good news, there are still a risk that we need to continue to monitor closely for long-term financial planning purposes as we move through the fiscal year, as final performance at June 30 is what will ultimately influence our contributions in the future. I'd like to now turn the discussion to a financial update of the county. In the second quarter, the county is projecting positive results from budget for all funds of $140.8 million, as you can see here in the table on the left. This is 1.3% of the county's total budget. The chart on the right shows the anticipated sources of fund balance, focusing on the general fund. While an overall positive operating balance is expected, the Health and Human Services Agency is anticipating overall negative operating results. I'll note that in all cases, each business group is staying within its legal appropriation authority. I'd also like to note from my first quarter update that the projected negative balance for HHSA has remained largely the same, just decreasing by roughly $2 million. This projected negative balance in the Health and Human Services Agency is due to the projected growing of sales tax receipts for realignment programs, as well as increased cost of the general relief program. The largest anticipated source of fund balance is general purpose revenue. A positive variance of $72 million is projected primarily from sales and use tax growth in the unincorporated area and higher interest earnings due to a rise in market rates. Outside of the general fund, all other funds combined are projecting $54.8 million of fund balances, which is 1.8% of the total amended budget. The most significant factor outside of the general fund is in the Department of Public Works in the road fund due to scheduled project changes in the capital improvement program detailed work plan for one-time capital projects. During my last update to the board in December, our first quarter economic update, I shared with you at that time a funding gap of $142.7 million for next fiscal year 24-25, which over time was forecasted to grow to over $400 million by fiscal year 28-29. This slide here is that same slide that we reviewed at that time. As you can see, the blue bar, which represents the general fund request, is higher than the yellow bar, which represents general fund resources, including anticipated growth in those locally generated discretionary revenues, as well as program revenues, including state and federal funding sources. Since this time, through the operational planning and development process across the enterprise that's been underway, we have been able to close the fiscal year 24-25 funding gap using a strategic review of expenditures and funding requests. Leveraging the county stabilization strategy, we'll continue to use ongoing revenue on a one-time basis and bridge funding until program revenues recover. Our strategy focused on a review of core mandated services, reducing discretionary investments, revenue strategies, and careful planning on capital spending. As we look to future years, we do anticipate that there will be a need of $63.5 million in fiscal year 25-26 and $48.9 million in 26-27, which we don't have resources identified for at this time, due to largely the depletion of our sales tax realignment stabilization funds and the wind down of ARPA-related funding sources and various program costs. The chart that we're reviewing today does not reflect the full scope of affordable housing, homeless solutions, sustainability initiatives, or the effects and infrastructure financing districts that may be under consideration. It does include a limited capacity for debt service to support capital projects, but there are a number of things that will influence these numbers as we get to this time and define our actual program needs and requirements going forward. Focusing on the general fund reserve, the general fund reserve as of June 30, 2023, our latest financial statements, was $797.5 million, the minimum, or the amount that we had available, excuse me. But the reserve itself, the requirement, is $863 million, which means that we are below our reserve by $66.3 million. Per the administrative code, as we talked about this morning, the CAO is required to present a plan to the board for the restoration of the targeted levels within 1 to 3 years, depending upon the use and reasons for the use and the severity of the event. At this time, restoration of the anticipated minimum is anticipated to occur based on the results of the operations that we're discussing today. So we're projecting results of $86 million, which will fully restore the $66.3 million that we are below our minimum, in addition to the action that your board took this morning to appropriate $9.6 million for flood response activities. That restoration plan will be reflected and documented in the operational plan document when it is released at the beginning of May. To address one-time costs anticipated to come online during fiscal year 24-25, the county intends to continue to use its stabilization strategy and to advance FEMA reimbursements due to the general fund to support those one-time needs. While the general fund balance is currently below the minimum requirement, it's still available for specific uses with a 4/5 vote of approval from your board. These uses include unanticipated revenue shortfalls or expenditure increases, a legally declared emergency, unforeseen changes to pension liability, risk due to maintaining aging infrastructure, and to promote the long-term fiscal health and stability of the county. Any planned future draws below the minimum reserve are anticipated to be replenished by our pending FEMA reimbursement. With that broad update on the current year operating results and our budget strategy as a primer to heading into budget, we'd now like to turn our conversation to our capital improvement needs assessment. Modern and well-maintained infrastructure, of course, is the key to delivering exceptional services to the public and providing safe and efficient workspaces to our county employees. The county's CINA, a capital improvement plan, is reviewed and revised annually to ensure that it is aligned with the board's initiatives, community priorities, as well as our county program needs. The recommendations before your board today will enable staff to move forward with short and long-term activities that align with project timelines with anticipated funding sources, which will ensure that the highest priority projects of the community and the board are executable. Here to discuss these and other related topics are Marco and Brian Albright. Please take it away.
Thank you, Ebony. The CINA is a planning document that includes a prioritized list of capital projects over a 5-year period that require funding. The projects included on the CINA strike a balance between what we've heard from the community about their needs, the board's priorities, support of our existing infrastructure, and budget availability. The capital project includes new county buildings, recreational facilities, green infrastructure or land acquisition that supports an existing county service or program run by one of our departments and requires capitalization for financial reporting purposes. Projects included on the CINA are implemented via a two-phase approach that includes a pre-construction phase and a construction phase. Pre-construction efforts include site programming, identification of risks, and development of a budget estimate. Only after projects have completed the pre-construction phase and are deemed ready for execution will they be recommended for construction funding. The SENA is not a budget document and has no fiscal impact. Rather, it presents the community and operational needs for capital investments and the estimated financial resources that will be required to meet those needs. The SENA development process was recently enhanced to increase transparency and provide more opportunities for community engagement. The process enhancements included additional updates to the board offices, an annual community workshop, and the requirement for projects to be assessed in alignment with the county's strategic initiatives. We've revamped the website. It provides detailed information about the SENA, a GIS dashboard with project details and strategic assessment information, recordings of our annual workshop, and widgets that allow stakeholders to ask questions directly to county staff. The SENA we're submitting to you today includes $100 million of new, unfunded, or partially funded capital projects that can be referred to the operational plan for funding consideration in the coming fiscal year. What will be incorporated into the operational plan will be dependent on the identification and availability of funding. The county's anticipated capital funding need across the 5-year planning horizon totals approximately $1.2 billion. The SENA is a living document that continually responds to the developing needs of our residents and the county operation and leadership priorities. Currently, the county's portfolio contains 40 previously funded projects in construction or recently completed with appropriations of over $830 million. We'll now provide a project overview. The SENA recommends 18 projects with a funding requirement of approximately $100 million in year one, or FY 24-25. All projects are assessed for alignment with our county's strategic initiatives. The next few slides will review examples of this alignment. Each slide includes an icon in the bottom right-hand corner corresponding to the supported initiative in the county's strategic framework. The SENA includes projects that advance the strategic initiative of community by increasing access to the county services and promoting the well-being of our communities and environments. The SENA also features projects that promote equity by improving service delivery, providing access to green space, and creating recreational opportunities in the underserved areas. Additionally, it includes investments that empower our workforce and enhance operations, as well as projects that reduce risks to staff health and safety by improving aged or deficient infrastructure. The SENA recommends projects aimed at advancing the strategic initiative of justice by improving community safety, and projects that promote environmental justice by creating greener neighborhoods and reducing potential public exposure to pollutants, contamination, and other hazards to public health and environment. Sustainability is integrated into the planning and design process for all projects on the SENA. Innovative and sustainable facility construction is used to mitigate climate change and improve the health of the community and the natural environment. We recently completed a fire station in East Otay Mesa that is off the grid, LEED Gold certified, and has reduced embodied carbon by 34%. Next, we'll provide information about projects that have been previously approved in SENA, funded, and are now in an active state of pre-construction, construction, or recently completed. Currently, General Services manages 11 pre-construction projects valued at approximately $64 million, including an expansion to the county library at Forest Ranch. This project will allow an expanded literacy, educational, and cultural programming to the community. Pre-construction efforts are also in the works for new behavioral health facilities, fire stations, and libraries. Once pre-construction efforts have been completed, you'll see these projects move forward on the SENA with a recommendation for construction funding. There are 11 projects currently under construction with appropriations of close to $500 million. New county animal shelters gearing up to break ground. This state-of-the-art facilities will provide central geographic coverage for the unincorporated area, will be more efficient, and provide a safer environment for departmental staff, the animals, and the public. Also, a new psychiatric health facility in North County is wrapping up construction this summer. And we recently completed a total of 5 projects valued at $315 million. The portfolio recently completed includes updates to the county's public safety facilities, the Live Well Center, and newly expanded libraries. Now I'll turn over to Brian to discuss implementation of the parks portion of the CINA.
Thank you, Marco. The current parks portfolio includes a total of 74 capital projects in various phases of planning and pre-construction, construction, or recent completion. We have 47 projects valued at $181 million in pre-construction, including improvements to Otay Valley Regional Park, Heritage Park, and a community center in Mira Mesa. There are 23 projects valued at $77 million in active construction. These projects include a campground expansion at Sweetwater Summit Campground, a new park in Fallbrook, and replacement of a 45-year-old visitor center at Stelzer Park. We recently completed 4 projects valued at $22 million, including a new equestrian center in Lakeside, resurfacing of the playground at Waterfront Park, new park amenities at Lonnie Brewer Park, and a new accessible cabin at Guahomie Regional Park. I'll now turn it back over to Ebony to wrap it up.
Thanks, Brian. The recommendations before your board today are to approve the CINA as drafted and to refer it to the Chief Administrative Officer for funding and implementation of individual projects. Today's action does not approve funding the projects. Final funding recommendations and associated actions will occur through the budget process. As we look ahead, we continue to monitor the risk closely, and most significantly, the state outlook estimated a higher budget deficit than previously estimated when originally released. The delays on FEMA reimbursement continue to be a risk, as there may be deferrals to future years. Increases to the cost structure of the county from the impacts of inflation, market volatility, including housing market volatility, which impacts our discretionary revenues, as well as the cost of retirement, which are some of our largest cost drivers, and general economic conditions, which impact other significant revenue sources, including sales tax-driven revenue that fund key health and public safety programs, and the need to maintain the county's infrastructure and to ensure adequate facilities to provide county services and facilities. To mitigate these risks, the county team has deployed a multifaceted approach, which is also being applied in the development of next year's budget. To that end, there are several broad mitigation strategies that will serve as a guide as we navigate through the budget planning process. County department heads and finance staff are actively undertaking a review of existing resources as well as opportunities to generate revenue. We are performing a careful review to ensure that county financial resources, including those outside of the general fund, are being put to use. We'll also be pressed to look closely at operating and capital infrastructure needs and priorities of the community and your board, and to formulate and deploy strategies related to the timing of program implementation or aligning service levels to the most equitable delivery of those services. As we look ahead, we'll be carefully considering bridge funding, at-risk activities to mitigate disruptive impacts to people when they need us the most, while providing the critically needed space and time to develop tactical plans to advance structural program reform. We will continue to engage with the community and with your board in the coming weeks and months as we implement a budget strategy to ensure that it balances operational priorities while representing the broad needs of the community and the priorities of your board. That concludes our presentation. We thank you for your time and attention.
So before I turn it over to public comment, I just want to, sir, can you please make sure that if you either...
I was helping them fill out forms to talk to you. Sorry for assisting the people.
Yeah, they can go ahead and ask our team. Thank you. All right, so I just want to make sure that I thank staff for all the presentation and all the work around this. I know that there's been a lot of work that went into closing the $142.7 million fiscal 2025 budget and gap development and CINA. So I want to say I appreciate that. I think there's still a lot of work ahead of us to address some of the needs that we're going to be facing and a lot of uncertainty. Slowing, I think you mentioned those already, but just to emphasize, right, the slowing sales tax revenue, winding down ARPA-related funding sources, as well as potential impact to the county 73, impact that the county will have based on the $73 billion state budget deficit, and the May revise is right around the corner, and so that'll give us a bigger perspective about where we are. And so I know that we're going to meet this challenge with our priorities and making sure that we think about this from a long-term sustainability piece. I do think that the proposed CNAT reflects community input gathered through extensive outreach, engagement, and thorough planning, use of resources to meet the critical needs of our residents, while ensuring that existing facilities and infrastructure are properly maintained. There's always opportunities for more engagement, but I think it's important that some of the things that you mentioned really do align with our county strategic initiatives. And so the environmental justice and investing in the stormwater program, right, is one that's really important for our residents and neighborhoods, and we've heard from folks. It also advances equity by providing access to green spaces and creating recreational opportunities in some of the underserved areas or underinvested areas, and continuing to progress on the continuum of care for behavioral health. I think that's extremely important as we're getting mandates, or the recommendations from the state. They are mandates, pretty much. And so I think that we see that in this footprint. So I appreciate that. And then finally, aggressively combating climate change by integrating sustainability in all of our actions or facilities, open space, and fleets. And I think Marco, I'm really proud of the fire station in Otay Mesa, right? I think everybody should go see that one, because it really is an example of the work that we're doing as a county and really moving forward. So I do believe it achieves a balanced approach to meeting today's challenges, and while at the same time really thinking about big picture and long-term stability. So there's a lot of things that we still need to get done, but I think being prudent at this time is extremely important. So I'm happy to make a motion to items 16, 17, and FP01 moving forward. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the public for public comment, and then my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 10 requests to speak on this item, 7 in person, and 4 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we received 1 e-comment in opposition. Any members of the public that requested to speak on items 16, 17, and Fire Protection District 1, item 1, please dial into the conference line using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. All speakers are in opposition of this item. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall. I'll call the first 5 individuals. I'd like to invite Mark, Audra, Michael Brando, Consuelo, and Gambler. If I've called your name, please come forward. I have 2 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
Mark, so Nora was just saying that this addresses climate change, and that's Hegelian dialectic. If you look that term up, it means they take a problem that's, well, they can make one up, or they usually take a problem that's small. And for instance, weather, and they make it something really big. And then instead of addressing it with a solution, it's problem, reaction, solution is what it would mean in English, Hegelian dialectic from the philosopher Hegel. Instead of having a solution that any reasonable person would want, they have a solution they want, usually for a totalitarian purpose. For instance, the 2 towers are bombed, so we have to look at every single American and everything they do. Forget the people who really might be terrorists. Let's just investigate all of us. So now, here's some people that are very reputable that talked about climate change. John Coleman, who's the co-founder of the Weather Channel and won Meteorologist of the Year. So that's pretty freaking reputable. And here's a video title on YouTube where he's saying what a scam it is. Here's Christopher Monkton. Now, when Lord Christopher Monkton, who's a Scottish lord and doesn't need to help us at all, lost out on being part of the House of Lords like his dad because he stuck up for the people saying climate change was a scam, when he could just be a royal, which he is, you might want to listen to him. There's a title on YouTube. There's No Emergency. Check this one out by Judith Curry. She's an eminent doctor. There's No Climate Crisis. This, I believe, is by William Happier. His credentials are too long to even list. Pollinators in Peril, check this out by Nikki Florio. She's incredible and very degreed her specialty. Lots of things to show you what they're doing and planning, and that are just not okay at all. These things are happening in Europe, and they'll be happening.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
Consuelo. Inflation is purposeful and is caused and created by who? Government. Mortgages are supposedly lower, but property taxes have gone up. Another lose-lose for the tax cattle indentured servants. People can act appalled by the potty language used or actions by the frustrated tax-paying citizens, but those words and actions pale in comparison of what these politicians and local government have done to our people and infrastructure within our county. It's an English nursery rhyme. They hang the man and flog the women that steal the goose from off the common, but let the greater villain loose that steals the common from the goose. The law demands that we atone when we take things we do not own, but leaves the lords and ladies fine who take things that are yours and mine. We see, that was circa 1764, we see that things have not changed.
Thank you. I'd also like to invite forward the remaining speakers in opposition in person, Lee Perry, Michelle Hames, and Jill Helled. I've called your name. Please come forward.
I was told I should be a little bit nicer.
Can you please state your name?
Gambler.
You shouldn't do anyone any harm. You should sheath your competitive instinct. You shouldn't try to win. You know, you don't want to be too aggressive. You don't want to be too assertive. You want to take a back seat and all of that. It's like, no, wrong. You should be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you should learn how to control it.
I'm in the world, but not of it. I'm trying to tame my inner beast. Satan devouring strong men like a dinner feast. We traded masculinity for inner peace. It's bittersweet, but I would never let him enter me. I'm 10 toes down. We coming for the devil. We gon' bend your crown. We taking back the city, might offend your town. I'm raising up my boys, so when they men, they don't bow. Now then, I'm talking now. We walking right into the battlefield. They feminizing the men and the battle's real. Don't forget the faith, cause that's your battle shield. I got my double-edged sword to make the cattle squeal. Give me a heart like David. Dude wasn't playing. Defy my army and we finna get to slaying. So get ready and pick a battle weapon, then sharpen it. You should be an absolute monster, then harness it. Monster, then harness it. Monster, then harness it. Strong man, strong man. Don't let it feminize you what you want, man. Stand tall cause they trying to get you to fall, man. The devil knows that he gotta take out the strong man. He gotta take out the strong man. Are you gonna die for the faith? Be a call, man. Don't let it feminize you what you want, man. Many men are weak.
No comments, Nora?
Strong man. Many men are weak, you better stand. Show me, homie, are you even getting banned? All you gotta say is a woman ain't a man. And you just gotta pray what you doing with the plan. Take a look around, we put women on the front line. Ah, man, soft men make for a tough time. We've been too complacent,
I'm
got
gonna win,
used to
right,
the
Michael?
sunshine. Put your guard down, feet up, won't you unwind? We let the devil in, and now it's too late. Just a little bit of sin, and now it's too great.
Oh, please.
Just a little slumber, devil hit you with
Reject
the
it
freight.
now.
Now your pastor is a woman, everybody took the bait. Everybody took
See
the
what
bait. You
happens.
see it coming down the pike. More Michelle's gonna be turned into a mic. LGBTQ, but they forgot the dike. Man, forget YouTube, all they do is give me strikes.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I am here to speak about the monster truck events at the Diane Jacob Equestrian Center.
Can you please state your name?
Lee Perry.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am a longtime resident and horsewoman from East County. I grew up on a ranch that my father bought in the 1940s, which is now the El Cajon DMV and all those apartments. I am a national and world champion. I was raised on a ranch, and I've owned my own ranches. And I'm here to express my concern for this very noisy and...
Ma'am, you can talk about that issue during public non-member, public comment on agenda item. The item that we have before us is the SENA project, and so that item that you're speaking to is not this item. So, but you're welcome to stay, and as soon as we're done with the agenda, we're happy to have you speak, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, fantastic.
Fine.
My person uses the name Audra. That song was good, huh, Jim? You were bumping your...
Thank you. We'll resume our public comment. Again, apologies for the disruption. We'll resume with those that requested to speak by phone. We'll begin with our first caller.
Hi, Paul Bold. 2 minutes, 3 items, what a bargain. It is a shame that there was nothing on the capital improvements list for the homeless, immigrant, or sewage crises. If a situation is an emergency, if it affects the county, we should not wait for outside help. I also noticed on tomorrow's agenda there is so much maintenance that it's backlogged or not looked into until it is an emergency, that storm repairs from January were added to the emergency project list, even though it seems like a long-term damage, not storm damage. Moreover, the county seems to want to put things in harm's way, like a new park in the midst of severely polluted and sewage-laden TJ River Basin. Yet the county keeps continuing this emergency while apparently ignoring the problem in this county, Mission Bay, SD River, La Jolla areas, Tourmaline Troop Park, and Pacific Beach, Coronado, Ocean Beach, the latest is San Luis River Mouth and Oceanside. Maybe a list of repairs you know will be needed should be published and updated regularly instead of all this capital improvement junk. Thanks.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
It's truth. I hope people's speeches won't be cut from the record since the feed got cut. Item 16 inflates the budget by another $11.6 million. The equity statement says, quote, departments are expected to work within their respective budgets, end quote. Since they're overspending, HHSA runs on either low or zero expectations. Recommendation 5, $1.4 million for the East County Crisis Stabilization Unit and Recovery Bridge Center, and Rec 6, almost $17 million towards the Edgemore site. Those two recs are money shuffling, as Joel said.
It doesn't have to be done with ARPA money. It can be done with any money. The lost revenue strategy. We do it all the time.
Rec 16, about $247,000 in taxes for the release of the security deposit provided by the developer. Does that mean people get their money back? Rec 19 is $1.6 million toward the integrated property tax system. I feel like we could skip that one. Rec 20, $162,000 money shuffled because somebody got the numbers wrong for financial report.
Chairwoman Vargas, it appears we lost connection again. Give me a moment. We'll try to dial back in. And Chairwoman Vargas, that caller dropped off. It appears that concludes public comment on this item.
Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it, and thanks for the SENA update. Appreciate this in both items, and for the budget update as well. I'm really happy to see money going towards the Butterfield Park in Valley Center. The community had a big campaign for that park, and I was happy to advocate, and hopefully, with staff's help, we found funding for that. Looking forward to it, and this is a great asset in Valley Center, so I'm glad to see that's on the SENA. But I do have a question for you. This scaffolding on the outside of this building, is this permanent?
No, sir. It's coming down, most of it's coming down before May. There will be a little bit staying until May for the central tower to fix the red tile roofs and the remainder of the gutter. And then around the south wing, there'll be scaffolding up around the windows to restore the windows until about the June timeframe. And those will
So is the
shift.
majority of it coming down in the front in May?
Yes.
Of 2024?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks. I mean, I know there's a lot of work that's been done. It's just, as I look out, it looks like it's permanent out there. But thank you. Yes.
Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you for the presentation and doing, the due diligence around these adjustments. I want to also just highlight Casa de Oro Library and Calavo Park. I know that members of the community have been advocating for those for a very long time, so thank you for including them in the SENA. In addition to the Community Enhancement Fund for District 4. So I will have questions as we go along, but I appreciate this update and also forecasting what we can expect from the state at this point. And so I'll be looking forward to that May revise to see what types of adjustments which we have to make. Thank you.
All right. With that, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Chairwoman Vargas, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
We will now move on to discussion item number 18. Thank you for all the work. Authorize and approve actions related to Compassionate Emergency Solutions on Pathways to Housing project. As soon as the team is settled, I'm going to ask them to go ahead and do their presentation.
I was trying to decide between good evening or good afternoon. Which is it, do you think? Is it evening yet? Okay, so I'll go for that. Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. The board continues to take a strong leadership role in advancing the County of San Diego framework for ending homelessness. In the 3 years since Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities Department was launched, collaboration to address homelessness has increased dramatically. Since 2021, the county has helped stimulate the production of nearly 900 shelter beds and safe parking spaces countywide, many of which have already opened their doors to clients. This is in addition to the expansion of outreach activities, which has resulted in more than 60,000 engagements with people at risk of or experiencing homelessness. There are many other notable accomplishments in this area, such as securing more than $80 million in collaboration with regional partners for homelessness response efforts. The focus of today's presentation is to share updates on the implementation plan for several compassionate emergency solutions and pathways to housing projects. We will also present next steps for building these emergency housing options. Here with me today to present is Barbara Jimenez, Community Operations Officer for the Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities, and Marco Medved, Director of General Services.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. On October 19, 2021, the Board of Supervisors directed staff to come up with a plan to identify properties, buildings, and concepts for low-barrier emergency shelters, safe lots, and associated services in East County and countywide, preferably in the unincorporated area, and return to the board with identified locations, funding, and an implementation plan. On February 8, 2022, staff returned to the board who approved the plan to implement compassionate emergency solutions and pathways to housing. This implementation plan was guided by extensive community engagement and included input from people with lived experience. The plan outlined community desire for non-congregate shelters such as sleeping cabins, safe parking, and RV parking options. Since this plan was approved by the board in February of 2022, multiple actions have taken place to expand regional emergency housing capacity, which are listed on the next two slides. This slide shows actions related to establishing a county emergency housing options to address homelessness in the unincorporated communities. As part of this effort, we have launched Magnolia Safe Parking Site, and Bancroft Safe Parking is launching this spring. Both sites were approved by the board to proceed with construction in March of 2023. Additionally, we've identified sites for recreational vehicle safe parking and a sleeping cabin site, which will be discussed in the following slide. We also took several collaborative actions to help expand regional emergency housing capacity. We assisted city jurisdictions through various efforts to expand their emergency housing. We've supported efforts to establish a 150-bed Rosecrans shelter and a 44-bed domestic violence and human trafficking victim shelter in partnership with City of San Diego. In June 2022, we launched a $10 million capital grant program, which awarded 9 emergency housing projects in 6 cities, thus adding an estimated 432 new shelter beds and 85 safe parking spaces region-wide. In November 2023, we launched the Building Partnerships Program to support private entities with grants to purchase sleeping cabins from county-approved vendor, Pallet Shelter, and set them up on their private properties as emergency housing. Next, I'll go over 2 projects that we're seeking your approval today: Willow Senior and Family RV Parking and Hamishaw Sleeping Cabins. The Willow Senior and Family RV Safe Parking Site has been identified on county-owned location in the unincorporated lakeside community. The 17-space design will also include office space, storage, and restrooms. Similar to Magnolia and Bancroft Safe Parking, this site will provide a safe, legal, and accessible place for seniors and families experiencing homelessness to sleep safely in their RVs and receive services to help them secure permanent and stable housing. Next steps, if approved today, would include completion of site design, site construction, and additional community engagement. Competitive solicitation will also be issued for the site operator, who will provide case management, housing navigation, flexible funding, meals, site maintenance, security, and hygiene facilities. Ongoing annual costs for operations are estimated at $860,000. In March 2023, the governor, in partnership with county leadership, announced that the county would receive 150 sleeping cabins that the state would design, permit, fund, and construct on a property identified by the county. This project initially considered 2 Caltrans sites, and county staff immediately commenced planning with the state and Caltrans. As planning efforts advanced and some of the parameters shifted, it was determined that establishing one single site is more cost-effective, and today staff are recommending Hamishaw site to move forward as more viable. Establishing a single